screen.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Saturday edition of Heavy Metallurgy. Alan's with us again, of course, and special guest, Hunter Ginn, a longtime friend who I've never met. Is it strange to say, but it's very, very true. This gentleman is one of the members of Canvas Solaris and Radical Research podcast, which hopefully a lot of you are familiar with. If not, definitely need to check that out. You can go to wherever podcasts are housed, and Podbean, iTunes, all that stuff. Check out Radical Research. But Hunter, hello. Good to see you, my friend.
Yeah, good to be here.
Thanks for joining us.
No, it's my pleasure.
I'm sure there's something you'd rather be doing on a Saturday evening, but we've got you for a couple hours anyway.
No, actually, there's not. My life is pretty uneventful these days.
It happens. The older you get, the worse it gets.
This is actually like a real thrill.
For us too.
No, very much. Yeah, we've been talking to Hunter for a few weeks, looking for a good time slot to get everybody together for this. So it's really fun that it's come together.
Yep. Yeah, thank you, guys.
And for folks that are maybe confused that we're on Saturday, this isn't going to be a normal occurrence. It might happen once in a while, but for the most part, we'll be back on Fridays. So, but what we're mainly here for is I want to talk about this band.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
This band.
Well, you have that.
I have this.
Damn.
Did you send this to me, or did one of the other guys?
I didn't send that to you. Like, man.
I like the lack of effort. The lack of effort. But you know, if Canvas Solaris was a car, you're old enough to be classified as a classic car. Did you know that? In the registration?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, that's the vintage.
The vintage. So
yeah,
how does a band like Canvas Solaris? I mean, you guys got 21 years.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
yeah.
A pretty good list of some very potent, amazing albums.
Yeah, so we actually, you know, you have the specimen there. We began as a death metal band.
Yep.
And in late 2001, had kind of run out of steam with that and decided that we would go instrumental because there were other things that we wanted to do. And I mean, we were in Statesboro, Georgia. So it's not like we had, this, robust choice of singers available to us.
See, usually most bands have no drummers to choose from. So you guys were in a very precarious, much easier situation.
Yeah.
I think Hunter had that one covered.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And, we had all these influences to begin with. Like when Nathan and I first met, our initial conversation covered Carcass, Cynic, They Can Dance, and Skinny Puppy.
Nice.
And that we knew at that moment that we were, destined to be best friends.
Right.
And, as the band evolved, we wanted to do other things, and we felt a bit tethered by having a vocalist at all. And so that's when we just decided to be an instrumental metal band, which was like really, I didn't think about it at the time, but like, it's kind of frontier territory back then. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's it's kind of a thing now.
It is, but still, it's kind of a niche within a niche, really. Because
yeah,
I mean, you got Russian Circles. You guys were before that band. I mean, you weren't before Mogwai, but I don't know if all their stuff's instrumental or not. Are they?
Yeah. So there was like a post rock and math rock thing. Like you had Breadwinner, Don Caballero, Mogwai. But I think Champs was probably the first band that I would call like, an explicitly metal band that also was instrumental.
Yeah. Yeah. And I listen to like Sublimation, and I hear Watchtower. I hear
it was
the newest.
all there.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a while since I've spun it, and I spun it a couple days ago to refamiliarize, and was really blown away with the time signatures and the interesting, but without being overbearing.
Well, cool. I appreciate that. That's always kind of been of a conscious thing for us.
Yeah,
is to not be too overbearing.
Right.
Like anybody that can play can shred, but for us, it's more important to write songs.
Well, that's like, you listen to like Death Row's Deception Ignored. That is like from beginning to end shred, but there is sense to the mayhem,
Absolutely.
You guys covered it in the podcast.
Yeah.
I wish I was there for this conversation. It's one of my favorite.
You know how I feel about Deception Ignored. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's all in there. And the bands that do a great job with it, they're shredding. They're showing everybody that they practiced during their formative years, but there's still songs within there. Corner were another good example of that, shred, super busy rhythms with meaning and memorable things to recall within the riffs.
Absolutely. And you mentioned Johnson and Maycock. One of my proudest moments is that 7-inch tribute that we did. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. That's one thing I liked, and I noticed a lot about, especially the new Canvas Solaris album. You guys are, obviously, very proficient, very technical, but the songs are still very song oriented. There are lots of memorable parts. These are songs that can get stuck in your head and that you can go back and play over and over. And I think that's something that some bands that really aim for that high technicality, they sometimes lose that. Yeah. They have all these parts that fit together, and it's amazing if you're a musician and into it. But they're not songs that you're going to sit there and like kind of hum or think about, in that sense. But especially on the new Canvas album.
Well, thank you.
Especially right off the bat, with the opener. So that's a really cool song. It's amazing musicianship, but it's also a great song at the same time. And that's really, it's an album I can go back and play over and over, because of that.
Thank you. Yeah.
Which is difficult for me because I don't always gravitate to instrumental music. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Because even though half the time in like death metal music, you can't understand what they're saying anyway, or if you can, it's usually stupid. I still need the pull of a vocalist, whereas with Canvas Solaris, I find myself getting through an album and realize I didn't miss it. Well,
Marty, I have to say, like, I'm the same way. Yeah. I don't listen to a lot of instrumental music. I also like the pull of the vocalist.
Yeah.
But I think the challenge and the thing that I like about doing this is trying to find a way to make music that makes you forget that there's not a vocalist.
Right. I did notice on your Instagram, you've got another project coming out. I don't remember the name of it. I was going to recall it, and I totally forgot to do so before.
I do. It's called Plague Psalm, and it started as a solo project, but our Canvas Solaris' bassist, Gail Perlow, I got him involved in it, and Nathan. I mentioned Nathan. Nate's my best friend and longtime partner. He was involved in the beginning, but Gail is perfectly suited for this. It's a kind of an experimental percussion led thing. It's pretty dark. Basically, and I don't know if you guys listen to the podcast, but when I talked about this, it was on the Eucharist episode, but 2020 was a difficult year for me. And I got heavily into drinking, very, very heavily. And I'm a recovering alcoholic now. And Plague Psalm was kind of my way to turn all the destruction of that year into something constructive. And yeah, totally. It was just therapy. inspired by Dead Can Dance, In Slaughter Natives, the Cold Meat Industry, like the Stall Plot label. I know you know all this stuff, Marty.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm really stoked on it. My dear friend Jason Walton.
Yep. I know the gentleman as well.
I know you do. I'm repping his shirt right now.
Yep.
Yeah. So he's actually mastering it for me right now, and I'm gonna do a small press cassette pressing and do a band camp, and we'll just kind of see how it goes. But
who would have ever thought in a million years that cassettes would circle around and be a thing again? Can you believe it?
No.
Whose idea was that?
I keep my I keep this here just always.
Yep.
Yeah. Like I grew up on cassettes.
Me too. We all did.
Yeah. And it was like, okay, so I can buy one CD or I can buy two cassettes, right? Yep. But cassettes taught me how to listen to music. Like you can't skip. Like, it taught me how to listen to albums.
Mm-hmm.
I remember back in the day, the ordeal it was making a mixtape and trying to figure out if that gap was actually the end of the song or if it was just an accent or fuck, what is that?
Mm-hmm.
And then you get lost. You don't know if you're writing the right song title down on the mixtape J card. It's like, CDs definitely revolutionized that. But here we are. Tapes are back, and I even find myself buying them, which I swore after the last time a tape was eaten in a deck, I was done. Fuck you, I'm done. No more, I'm done. But no, here we are.
Yeah. Cassettes taught me how to use, a pencil and a tiny pair of tweezers to, unroll a giant mangled ball of magnetic tape. So I'm quite happy not going back to that part of my childhood again.
Yeah. No.
Right on, Nikki. Great album. And also, are you able to see the comments in the chat on the side?
I just saw that.
Okay, right on. You're unable, you cannot respond to them in real time, which is a fault with the software. But if you want to open up a separate window, I will try to put stuff up as we go. But And after talking about the music, I do want to talk about Radical Research. Again, for those of you that have not checked it out, it is Hunter Ginn and Jeff Wagner talking about everything from prog to metal and all of the oddities in between. How did this come about, and how has the reception been?
So it came about as a coffee table book. Jeff and I had the idea of writing a coffee table book on post black metal in Norway.
Mm-hmm.
And we've covered a lot of that. And we will continue to do so. But the original idea was that I would write essays attendant to all these bands. Jeff would do interviews, and it would be very heavily visual. Mm-hmm. But Jeff was ensconced in writing books at the time,
Still is.
and was tired of doing that.
Yeah.
And he had the idea of doing a podcast. And at the time, I didn't even know what a podcast was. And
it's huge. It's a huge market nowadays.
It is.
It really is.
Stupidly, we decided to begin with a podcast on Ulver's William Blake album.
Yep.
Which was an ambitious undertaking and not an entirely successful episode by my estimation or Jeff's. But yeah, that's how it started. And, like Jeff and I have been talking about music for so long. We just decided to kind of mobilize that energy into something, tangible. And that was pretty much the beginning of Radical Research. Just having those conversations and recording them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's really fun. For anyone that's not familiar with it, and I'm guessing most folks watching are, but yeah, y'all, tend to, pick topics and dive very deep on them, even if maybe, a single album or, one single musician, and talk about their career, like with the Uli Kusch video you did a while back.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're all really interesting topics. If anybody hasn't checked them out, I'd encourage them to. Even some of the videos where it may be an album I don't know anything about, or a style that I'm really not that into. I still learn a lot listening to y'all. For example, the Genesis episode y'all did on the the Lamb on Broadway.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm not a 70s prog guy. I've got nothing against it, but it's not something I know anything about.
Sure.
It was still a really, really interesting video to listen to, even though I had no context for it. I still learned a ton just listening to the conversation that you
It's
and
good to
Jeff
hear.
recorded.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a really good, really excellent podcast for folks who are interested in going deep on those topics.
It's two guys with very strong likes and dislikes, talking about things that mean a lot to us. The only complaint that I've ever heard is that we rarely disagree.
I've talked to Jeff about that. You guys agree on everything. You need a a doubting Thomas in there. You need a Juice Iscariot in there to shake shit up a little bit.
yeah, we're right. We need two apostles. The shitty apostles. Yeah, that's who we need. But yeah, like we tend to just like cover things that we, on which we find common ground. But yeah, it might be fun to do look in our private lives. Jeff and I definitely have our disagreements. Radical research tends to be that place where we can find ourselves together. But that's that's open territory, and I think that would be fun to do.
And the thing I like about the podcast, granted, I've known of you through friends, so I always felt like you're a friend of mine through association.
Yeah, same.
And, knowing Jeff, I listen to the podcast and I'll be like talking to the phone as I'm listening to it. What the hell are you talking about? Or no, that's not right. Or I just love the back and forth you guys have, and it draws you into the conversation. And I find myself commenting to the phone like I'm having a conversation with you guys, which
awesome.
Which is cool.
It's not like I send y'all messages after every 2 or 3 episodes where I'm literally creating stupid little images and just because you're stuck on something that I'm just like, oh, that's too funny. I have to make the visual to go along with this joke that they've got running through the episode. I've never done that.
Force Pits.
Cool, man. I'm trying to catch up with but let's get on to the topic today. And what we've been doing lately is having our guests choose the topic so they can come into the conversation passionate about what we're going to talk about. And what did you decide for us to discuss during the roundtable today?
I am an unapologetic whore for the 90s and 90s metal in particular, and mostly disenchanted with metal after the 90s. There are exceptions to the rule, but I grew up my metal origin story. If you guys don't know, I may have shared it on the podcast or not, but 1991, I was 12 years old, and I bought Sepultura's Arise and Entombed's Left End Path same day, and my life has never been the same since.
Nope. You started in the heavy end right away.
Yep. Yeah. So I got into, I guess my journey began a few months before that with my kind of a weird story. So I have really terrible allergies, and I took allergy shots for most of my teenage years. And my grandmother worked at an orthopedic surgeon's office, and so I would get my allergy shots there. My mom and I would go after school or whatever. Anyway, the orthopedic surgeon was this dude named Gary Lovelace, which great name. A pretty nice guy despite that. but he was a guitarist, and he was like in his like late 50s, early 60s, and just super curious about music. He turned me on to Soundgarden, and he was like, he told me and my mom, he's like, when you guys leave here, you should go to Turtles and get Hunter Soundgarden's Louder Than Love record. And so my mom, being a beautiful soul of a human being, did that. And that was kind of like the descent. And after that, I got into I got Facelift, I got into Ministry and some other things. But I guess I was like a junkie to begin with. And I was like, the record store clerks there were like really, really giving people. And I was just like, what's next? I want to go harder. I want to go deeper. And the guy, Mickey Altman, who managed that store, was like, take these two. And that was it. I just remember that I literally, like, I can feel in my bones the intro to Arise, you know?
Yep.
And I knew, I was like, my life will never be the same after this.
No, that's an awesome
word. It hadn't been. So
mine was Kiss Alive. Kiss Alive was the one that set me on the path.
Yep. I did. Great record.
But that was the 70s, though. There was no Entombed in Sepultura. Yeah. My descent was much more gradual.
Yeah. I got 2 albums on my first sort of day also. It was And Justice for All and Sonic Temple by The Cult.
Oh, dude. Love that record.
Still love that one. I'm still not a huge Justice fan to this day. I didn't get into that one as much as I thought I might have, but it's good. But I never reach for it. I just don't. But yeah, the Sonic Temple, I'll still break that one out from time to time.
How do you feel about Beyond Good and Evil? Cole.
I'm trying to remember.
Late record, but like it like 2001.
Yeah, I don't think I ever heard it. I'm trying to remember if I did.
I would advise that you do.
Okay, I'll check that one. Did I see that one recently? I either saw it or maybe I did hear a couple of songs off of it recently.
Maybe for me.
It stuck in my head that
I'm constantly
I never did get through the whole thing.
Yeah.
If I've heard part of it, it's only been a couple of songs.
Okay.
Go buy Young Hunter the Soundgarden album with all the swearing on it.
Yeah.
That's a good
Yep.
So you chose 90s bands that were overlooked, maybe a little obscure, never really got their full day in the sun.
I did.
So
where shall we begin?
We're gonna start with you. You're gonna set this in motion.
All right. Well, let's see here.
I use a little boys' room while you start.
All right. Shall we wait till Marty gets back?
Sure. Yeah. And we can do that. Absolutely.
I can use the little boys' room as well.
If we need a quick break, that's quite all right.
Cool.
Yeah, I've told folks in the chat that I may not be in the chat as much tonight. I'm keeping an eye on my little boy while my wife's out and about.
Yes.
So, folks, if I'm not typing as much as I usually do, sorry about that. But there's a 7-year-old with a playing Pokemon over here on the side that I got to keep half an eye on, or the house will be destroyed and the cat will be covered in peanut butter and things will go bad, and then I'll have to answer to the wife when she gets home in just a bit. So, keeping an eye on that. But yeah, we're really glad Hunter's come on, and it's been fun going back through the 90s stuff and picking some underrated titles, which again, underrated is a little subjective sometimes, but I think, we're all trying to pick those things like Marty put in the video description for tonight. The albums that we really loved, that connected with us quite a bit, and we kind of, to us they were a big deal, but then we realized as time went by, it's like not a lot of people talk about this album, or this album, didn't really make a big splash or have a huge impact. It didn't influence tons of bands. You just don't see it come up. Maybe it's got kind of a mediocre Metal Archives review score, and you're just like, what's wrong with these people? This album is actually really great. So yeah, those are the kinds of things that we're picking out tonight. And it's been fun doing so because, sometimes it's hard to find a context to talk about those bands in. Some of the albums I've got here are ones I've been meaning to talk about in a video at some point, but it's been kind of hard finding a way to lump them together or, other topics that they fit into. So it's been fun to finally be like, tonight I get to pull those off the shelf.
And it's worth mentioning, what causes a band to be looked over? Is it poor, smaller record label, not good PR campaign? Did the band break up due to internal strife? There's a lot of things that could contribute to a band. It could be location. It could be
just the time it came out.
They came out during a time like look at Gothenburg, Sweden. How many bazillion bands came out of that city alone during the heyday of melodic Swedish death metal?
Yeah,
like Ceremonial Oath,
right?
Cardinal Sin,
Crystal Age,
yes.
Like we
bands
talked
that
about.
begin with C.
Marty, like we talked about last week. How much more attention would Cynic's Focus have gotten if it had come out 5 years later?
Dude, Cynic couldn't get arrested. Even the people that championed, the Roadrunner demo were completely gone by the time
they changed their style, though. They got a lot more complex and experimental.
They did. But the vocals changed. Everything.
But
all right, gentlemen, I suggest that we begin this discussion right here.
Nice.
Love that album.
I had forgotten about this album until you mentioned it.
Substance of Purity
it existed, and then it's like, wait a second, I've heard that once upon a time, and it was awesome.
It is.
It is awesome.
Really awesome.
It really is.
Also, a band. First of all, a band that looks like a band.
Yeah.
I don't look like I'm in a band. That's for damn
Not either. I look like a old fat homeless guy.
I wish I did. Yeah, same, man. I'm the old dude now.
I look like I'm in a boy band.
Lame ass haircut.
89.
But a chaperone for a boy band. Like the boy band chaperone at the school dance.
Tommy, Johnny, put those down. Get back on the bus.
Told you not to smoke that.
Yeah. Hands off her hips.
I said 6 inches.
Enough room for Jesus in there. Anyway, sorry.
This is not the way to start discussing heresy. So let's get back on track.
So this is a band a French band. There are not a lot of great French death metal bands. You got Loud Blast. Merciless, Suppuration. Trying to think who else. They've done well. They've done well with black metal.
Black metal's been a different situation.
But death metal, pretty barren ground. Another band, like most bands that I found out about via Metal Maniacs and Boy, Kurgan was a real champion of them. So was Eula Garrett. And just like an amazing record. So produced by Colin Richardson on a 16-track studio, which is madness. And for less than $5,000 back then, which again is a pittance. It cost a lot to make music back then.
Well, if you look at it, it still kind of does. If you want to do it right,
But if you know someone with a Pro Tools rig and some decent microphones, you can record wherever.
Right. True.
But back then, to have Colin Richardson, and he was only like a few years away from doing shit like, Burn My Eyes and Demanufacture and Heartwork.
Yep.
Like, it's pretty resourceful.
Yeah.
I don't even know how we got roped into it. And it was on Restless, you know?
Right.
Like, Restless. So, well, actually, that is not the only Restless album that will be featured this evening. Which I didn't even think about that.
But that's a great album to pick. I mean, I bought that on tape when it came out. I don't know where I heard about it, other than I saw the cover art and the record label, and it was at Camelot Music. I bought it.
You know what? I bought mine at Camelot.
Yeah.
In Augusta, Georgia.
Yeah, up Traverse City, Michigan. I got a Camelot Music. I got all my shit. That was the best fucking store ever.
Dude, Camelot was amazing.
It was amazing. Yeah. And blew me away. That song Substance of Purity is such a interesting, unique, well-written song.
Yep.
A lot of emotion and passion in the song.
Oh yeah. Tons.
Great. And their follow-up Colored Funeral is just as good, a little more teched out, I think. A little more
it is.
A little
it's
busier,
more,
a little harder to absorb up front.
More it's you know what I love about Colored Funeral is that when everybody else was migrating to simpler, more song-oriented and more modern styles, they doubled down.
Yeah.
They got more brutal, they got more technical. There's an American bent to the record that I love too. Like a New York style. I love the fact that they were completely unapologetic about trends, about everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's who we are. This is what we do. And Travel Through a Strange Emotion, probably one of my favorite death metal songs of the 90s.
Yeah, very cool. Very good stuff.
Yeah.
Here we go. Camelot was like a candy store for young metalheads. It was, man.
Yep. I mean, and especially, if you were in, different parts of the country where you didn't have a wide selection of music stores. Yep. I mean, Hunter and I growing up in the South, not exactly a heavy metal hub.
No.
Anywhere.
So northern Michigan, there's zero up here. Zero.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
We're 5 hours north of Detroit.
Yeah. So
that's where the bands would come through,
Yeah, the bi-monthly trip to a town with a mall big enough to have a Camelot. I mean, yeah, that was your Mecca. That was your pilgrimage. Yep. It was a thing because you knew you would find something interesting. I've never seen the album for sale anywhere. I think I must have heard it from that a friend had it back in the day, and I remembered it just being very awesome. It reminded me, more than a little passing of classic as fix in terms of its sound.
Yeah.
But then, I had just one of those that had kind of gotten lost in time until you brought it back up, which I'm glad you did.
Yeah, man. My parents would take me on a yearly pilgrimage to Tower in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
That was a wonderland to me.
Yep. Yeah. Maybe once a year we would get down to Atlanta for, like a long weekend and just hit because my dad's a record collector also. And we would just hit every used bookstore, every record stop, that you can find and just, go nuts.
Wax and Facts.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Criminal.
I got to say one thing about Camelot that shows how they had their finger on the pulse of what was going on in metal. For a chain store, I bought both of these in Camelot Music.
Oh, wow.
Really? Interesting.
These are the fan club.
Yep.
Wow.
Like totally random.
Satan's Host
fan club, I think.
Club thing there.
They had both of these on the shelf. I remember going there and like, what the fuck is this?
Yep.
They wanted like $13.99 for both, each. But Camelot Music got in weird shit, man. They got in weird, rare shit. I don't think these were like super mass produced. Maybe they were.
No,
I don't know.
Yeah.
Nope.
Well, appear to be.
Yeah. Remind me sometime, Marty, there's a funny story about those two, but it doesn't really fit in here. I don't want to sidetrack us this early on, but there's a funny story about those Satan's Nightmare releases.
Okay. So
there's a third one is what it comes down to.
Oh, there is?
Yep.
That's
the story for another time.
Okay. All right, Alan, you're up.
Okay. So I want to start with a very old favorite that I got about the time it came out in 94. It's an Australian band that leans kind of, I guess you would describe it as prog metal. A band called Vaudeville. and their only full-length album, Two Dimension Logic. Never got much attention anywhere. Only reason I even know it exists was it got reviewed. It was probably Sentinel Steel magazine. I know that's who I ordered it from back in the mid-90s, was Dennis. And I'm pretty sure he had done a review of it, and it sounded interesting in the write-up. So I picked it up, and it is a just amazingly well put together album, especially for a band's first outing doing this kind of ambitious style of music. They sound like they've been doing it forever. It's really well put together. The first half of the album, what would equal side A if it were on vinyl, those 4 songs fit together as perfectly as any 4 songs I've ever heard on a side. They just completely complement one another. They flow one from the other perfectly. But I mean, when you're moving from song to song, it's not like it's one giant song. But just strong vocal performance, great musicianship. There's nice performances, but the songs are still very distinct. You're not lost, in the progression or the technicality or anything. And it's one I never hear anybody mention. They did a couple of EPs later on towards the end of the decade. I think I've heard one of the two. It didn't make much of an impression at the time, and it did not get other people that had heard it and commented later did not care for it either. But this album is still
industrial.
Great. They was not the same style of music.
No.
But Vaudeville is one that I've had this CD for 27 or so years now, and it always stays on the shelf and gets the occasional play.
I gotta say, what is a band's last-ditch effort for a person to walk into a record store and pick up your album off the shelf? The last-ditch effort is your design, your cover art. If I saw that sitting on a shelf, it's no wonder they didn't get any bigger, because, I mean, what does that say about anything? Nothing. It's like the most unassuming album cover ever made, really.
Yeah,
it's like
the cover art's not great. I mean, as a child of the 80s, I appreciate them spelling the band name as awkwardly as possible, but at the same time, this one's awkward enough that I don't think some people even know what it's supposed to say.
Right.
But yeah, and random
and beyond that, like, why would you call your band Vaudeville?
Well, that's a great segue. Random fact: they took it from the Wall. I think it's the Wall of Voodoo song "Tragic Vaudeville" is the source of the name.
Wall of Voodoo's reach into the heavy metal community continues.
Yep. Exactly. So Mexican radio wasn't the only thing that they had their finger on. Yep. All right.
I love that album, by the way.
Great. I'm glad. It's nice to find someone else that has heard the album.
I'm a massive Queensryche fan. Mm-hmm. I don't know that anybody has co-opted the spirit of like Rage for Order quite like Vaudeville did.
Mm-hmm.
But
to Marty's point,
what about Lethal?
Well, that's plagiarism.
Wait for it.
Yeah, that's a different thing.
We'll get there.
That's just
still flattery.
Yeah. No, well, yeah, that's pretty offensive flattery.
Sure.
I like Program Fine, but the Vaudeville record actually, takes inspiration and does something different with it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, it definitely sound. You can hear that Queensryche influence, but it does not sound exactly like.
No, it doesn't. But it takes the spirit of adventure that you find in mid and late '80s Queensryche.
Absolutely. Yep. All right, Marty, I am going to kick it over to y'all, and while you do your first one, I'm going to go help a little boy brush his teeth.
Go check on the heat.
You do that.
All right. Well, let's talk about Sweden earlier. Let's go with Sweden. Let's talk about Gorment.
Oh,
this is a reissue that contains their Ending Quest full-length album and some demo and 7 inches. But this is probably one of my favorite Swedish death metal bands. That really, and still, into the 2000s, they started to get a little bit more hype and reissues, and it's just one of those bands that you wonder why, with the climate in which they came out. This came out in '94, which is prime time for, they should have been moving on to bigger and better things like Entombed and so many other bands in their country did. This is right on par with that stuff. It's really super melodic, heavy Swedish death metal. It's before the super melodeath style, so it's got that old school heavy, a little bit of punk in there, you know, like early.
Yeah, the D beat.
Yeah, the D beats in there. It's like a little Entombed's little brother, but I think their melodies are a little bit more on point. Maybe a little more dismember worked into it. But it's just really good, well written, mature sounding stuff for what is definitely probably a bunch of kids. I mean, they all were at this point, you know. But this is one of those bands that, yeah, the people that know, but it's, you know, you mentioned Gorman. A lot of people never even heard of this band, and especially, you know, back in the early 2000s, it was kind of one of those deals that not a lot of people talked about. But super great stuff. This is a Necroharmonic reissue. Like I said, it's got their full length and a couple demos, and or both are 7 inches and a demo, I think, on here. But good stuff. Hunter, I'm sure you've had a spell with you've spent some time with this band.
I have.
Yep.
I kind of like lump that in with the God Macabre record.
Oh yeah.
That kind of Paradise Lost influence in there too.
Yep.
Along with the D beat and
They took the Entombed sound and made it a little darker, I think.
Yeah.
A little more melody, maybe. A little less punk, I guess, and a little more melody. I don't know.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, and I think Gorman is a great sort of bridge between, you know, the Stockholm sound and the Gothenburg sound.
Yeah.
Because, like you say, there's more melody. There's a kind of a song focus in there.
Yeah.
No, it's special stuff, man.
Good stuff.
And really, like, inexplicably unknown.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you think about the Swedish bands that are well known, like, Gorman are right up there with any of them.
I mean, think about it. You got this album. If you were to put this next to Red in the Sky Is Ours, I'm sorry,
Exactly.
I'm grabbing this. Because
dude,
I've always been
no question.
Vocals have always been rough. On Red in the Sky Is Ours, his vocals sound fried. It sounds like they've been doing a ton of rehearsal before the recording, and his voice was shot, or they had shows and he blew out his voice. I don't know. And there's that weird violin shit in there. I mean,
knowing how much he was drinking back then, that
could be part of it too.
It could, and the guitar tone. The guitar tone's a bit of an issue.
Yeah, for sure. And
I love Al Svensson.
His riffs are otherworldly.
I don't even know that he's human, frankly.
No.
Yeah. And his approach to guitar harmony is unlike anything else. But that album is not without its flaws.
Which I think he went on to prove that he wasn't human with that Obligat. Just like, what planet did this fucking surface from?
Yeah.
All right, man, you're up. Let's see what you got. We may have to skip over Alan here once he's up dealing with the boy.
Last Crack.
You know what? I can honestly say I have never heard Last Crack. I've never heard them.
They're from Wisconsin, man.
I know. You'd think I would have, but I seen the was it the first album with the naked dude on the cover?
Well,
he's like, I don't know if I need that.
Damn near naked on this one too.
Right on.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess if you got it, flaunt it. But
Butto likes to. Yeah, he doesn't like clothes.
No.
Yeah.
Their clothing is a prison, my friend.
Okay, well, you know what? He's got some clothes on in this one. So this is a Road Racer, you know, one of Roadrunner's subsidiaries.
Yep.
Back in the day, along with RC.
Yep.
I guess you would call this alternative metal. I guess.
Right.
It's metal, but obviously absorbing a lot of influences from outside of the traditional metal realm. And talking of realm, the other great Wisconsin metal band, go on to be another band called White Fear Chain, where they joined forces. But this is an amazing album. And
never heard it.
Marty, I don't know. Look, I'm not gonna tell you that you'll love it. I don't know. But like, I don't know how this record wasn't bigger than it was, frankly.
It's a band name I've heard.
Mini Toboggan.
Yeah, I've heard. Yeah, the band. It's one of those names that comes up. It always comes up, but yeah, it always kind of slips away. It seems. So yeah, I think it's a great pick for an underrated one.
This is like past underrated. Everything about it's odd. I mean, I don't even understand what's going on with the album cover. I'm looking at it right now. There's this like weird sort of like disembodied face up here, and like Butto's half naked and he's praying on sand in front of a candle. I don't know.
I mean, he's praying for warm weather.
Yeah, I guess so. Like, man, I love not wearing clothes, but it's so cold here.
It gets really cold in Wisconsin.
Yeah, it's like, I need warmer weather, man.
So is that like proggy type metal, or someone mentioned that they were like lumped into the groove metal?
No. Well, it's
no mind funk going on there.
That amorphous, like early 90s thing. It could only have come out in like 1991. Yeah. Like I'm thinking about like a record like Mind Funk. Doesn't sound anything like that, but it's a product of that potpourri, like open-ended style, that open-ended spirit that you find in the early 90s, where boundaries sort of dissolved and like all the lines between genres became more permeable. But beyond that, the songs themselves are great, and that's why I chose to feature this, because it's not just like genre mashup. Like it's music that makes great sense.
What style of vocals are attached?
They're clean.
They're clean.
They're clean. God, it's hard to find a comparison point to Butto.
Well, that's cool then. I mean, that makes it interesting. The fact that they're hard to describe or compare to anybody else.
They are. But I would think that anyone who does like Soundgarden would find some common ground with Last Crack.
Huh, right on.
Without sounding like Soundgarden, but yeah.
Awesome. Okay, Alan, you are
all
up,
right,
my friend.
Since it's already come up, might as well do this one next. Lethal, Programmed.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. It was on the stack, so it was going to come up sooner or later. But yeah, this is Metal Blade release from 1990, and it's dead on in the classic Queensryche vein. If you like that, those classic Queensryche albums from the EP up through Mindcrime, this is a very good imitation of that. It never got a whole lot of attention, and I think two things happened in this case why this one got sort of overlooked with time. They made an excellent demo in '87, but it took 3 years for some reason before they got signed and got this album out. And I think that was sort of a key 3 years, because by the time this comes out in 1990, if you're not Queensryche,
right,
nobody's listening to you play this style of metal. That everyone's moving on into the realms of death, and black metal is right around the corner. Folks weren't looking for Queensryche clones so much at that stage. And then the other thing is, this band didn't follow it up with anything for a while. And when they did, it was an EP. And again, it's been ages since I heard it, but they sort of changed styles. Yeah, it was going more towards 90s.
Yeah.
I have it in my head. I remember it being sort of groove metal oriented, and maybe that's exactly a poor description. But yeah, it was nothing like this is just, again, classic. Great vocals, strong songwriting. Very talented. Across the board. And then yes, they're trying to sound like Bio Machine Patera mashup, and it's just like no, this is not what I want from a Lethal album. So it's just this one release, and the demo that came before it. But yeah, if you're in the market for something that sounds an awful lot like classic Queensryche, you will like this album. if you don't want somebody that's trying to emulate the Queensryche style, you will get a little bored with this album. But for my money, yeah, it's an underrated one. That had they been a few years earlier, maybe if they could have followed up and got this album out in '88 and really rode the coattails of Mindcrime a little heavier before that style of metal came and went, maybe there would have been more mileage for the band. I don't know.
So basically, that's a band that by the time that their album came out, Queensryche had already evolved into more commercial territories, Silent Lucidity, type of stuff, and I guess
Empire Time.
That programmed is like a time capsule, a snapshot in time, essentially.
Yeah, it came out a little too late, I think. Yeah. And again, it may have gotten lost even in 1988. It may have gotten lost in the crowd. I can't say for sure, of course.
And from Kentucky, right?
Is it Kentucky? It's an odd one like that.
Either Tennessee or Kentucky. I think they're from Kentucky.
Yep, you're right. Yep, they are Kentucky. Which,
okay.
I now know 2 heavy metal bands from Kentucky, I think.
Well, they are the Seattle of the South, I've heard.
Marty, where are you getting your information? We need to talk.
Yeah.
From White Claw right now is where I'm getting it. Okay. Let's talk about Finland for a while.
Do it.
Fair.
This album is one of those bands. This band has put out 6 albums total. This is the only one I've ever heard. And I listened to this and I always wonder why they were never bigger. This is Follow the Leaf with Evanescent, Ever Fading. This is completely... people have heard Obsequiae and love the castle metal style. If you listen to this album, I can hear where Tanner from Obsequiae got a lot of his inspiration, because there's like very soaring harmonies, guitar harmonies on here. Otherworldly, man. They're like super melodic. It sounds like medieval metal, which probably is not the way to go, because they're not going for a medieval style, but those in key, super soaring melodies, harsh vocals. It's just a very well written, memorable, powerful, melodic, emotive album. And I hear the reason why I never pursued this band further, I hear they drastically changed their style as they went on. And I mean, there's a lot of bands that I'm going to talk about tonight that did that, and I just was not interested. Disgrace is one of them. I'll get to them later, but they're a band that, bands, it's another reason why they maybe never really stuck the landing as far as getting bigger. Granted, this was on Defiled Records, which was a US label. I think they only put out a few things, but if you got a label that doesn't have a budget, doesn't have any sort of PR push, your band's going to be super cult following. And that's what this kind of was until the 6 albums later they broke up. And it's a shame, because this is another snapshot in time that this came out in 98, just at the end of the 90s. And when Melodeath was really hitting hard in Sweden, and black metal had taken shape at this point. Follow the Leaf is definitely within a very highly elevated melodic death metal sphere. Good, check it out. Evanescent, Ever Fading.
Cool. I've never heard
of them. I will have to check that out.
Check it out. It's really good. Good stuff. Hunter, you're up.
Okay, so let's stay in the late 90s here. December Wolves. Completely dehumanized. So Curiosity came out on Wicked World, which was there you go. There you go, Marty. So Earache subsidiary.
Yep.
Band from Massachusetts, playing a hybridized style of black metal, death metal, melodic metal. Really, really intense, amazing dry production. Really, really passionate performances from everybody involved, I feel like. And again, just kind of a snapshot in time. It's just one of those weird moments where everything that was sort of in the zeitgeist got meshed up together, but by an American band that doesn't sound particularly American. And Marty, you obviously know their album after that, which sounds nothing like Completely Dehumanized.
No.
And before that, they were sort of playing more
Scandinavian influence.
Yeah.
Yep.
I would say like a kind of a almost dogmatic black metal style, but not particularly well. But everything came together on Completely Dehumanized.
It's a very gritty aggression on that album. A very modern, almost borderline electronic, even though it's not. There's like a weird.
It's a moonfog element.
Yeah, there's a static in the sound it gives a very aggressive bite to Completely Dehumanized. Blaster Peace Theater, that one doesn't. I didn't keep that one, so I don't really remember it that much. But you nailed it, man. This is a great album that no one talks about.
Yeah, Blaster Peace never stuck with me. Like I wanted it to because I feel so passionately about this album, but it just it was like this band had its one moment.
Yeah. They had a really great demo called Wolf Tread, which I also have. It's a good demo, but the demo was better than the follow up. I mean, this still 10 years. This is very U.S. guys trying to sound Scandinavian.
Yeah, I don't love it.
And I also love the fact that, you got your sessions musician gets a candid shot on the tray card. Like, here's our sessions musician. She's beautiful. Check us out.
You'll love us.
You'll love it.
Marketing.
All right. Alan.
All right. Well, we'll stay in the later 90s for a minute. Now, this band has gotten plenty of attention and had a long career and done well for themselves, but this particular album does not get mentioned nearly enough. It's Mind's Eye by Dark Tranquillity. It's my favorite Dark Tranquillity album. Their other early stuff is really good too, but this album, everything just clicks really well. Yeah, it's one of my favorites in that, Gothenburg style. And, they're starting to move away from, that a little bit by this point, but it still, has all the key elements, and, the songs fit together incredibly well. Each one is very distinct, but the flow of the album is perfect. It ebbs and flows really, really well, which, it almost is like they're trying to do that very obviously with songs like Tidal Tantrum, that, they're trying to give you this back and forth, kind of journey through the album. And it's just, it does not come up when people talk about, the, top, Gothenburg albums or anything. The only thing I can figure is it may live a little bit in the shadow of its predecessor, because most folks, I think, cite The Gallery as their favorite from Dark Tranquillity, and it is a great album, no doubts about that. And then this is also the last one before they became, started that very cookie cutter Century Media sound that really plagued their next several albums. Yeah. They lost everything. There really was a case where, we got to the big label and we lost whatever it was that made us special. And the songs sounded the same. The albums sounded the same. The album covers were just, generic, blah, whatever. But for, the early stuff, if folks haven't checked it out by chance, the early stuff is really good. And for me, this is, the top of their career. But really, any of the early stuff is very, very strong. Album that deserves a lot more mentions than it tends to get anymore.
I agree. This is actually Jeff's favorite Dark Tranquillity as well.
Oh, okay.
I'm a Gallery guy.
That's perfectly fine. That's a good choice too.
But I will say that Mind's Eye, their best songwriting, their most focused songwriting, production's amazing.
Yep.
Love the cover.
Yep.
And you nailed it, man. Like when they got to Century Media, it was like, okay, we're professionals now, so we're gonna sell out everything to complete anonymity.
Yeah. It was like we have to have the corporate sound.
Yeah, right. We're buttoned up now, guys. Big time.
Yeah, it really was. Sad but true.
Okay,
All right, Marty.
I'm still in Finland,
That's a good place to be.
and we're in 1992, and this is Demigod's Slumber of
Oh,
Solitude.
son.
This is another one of those albums you listen to, and it is so dark and crushing, but it's got those Finnish mournful riffs going on in it. And the fact that this band was never bigger, I mean, is it because they're in Finland? Was it because they were on, well, this says SPV. I don't know if this is an original pressing or not. They were on a Drowned initially. So, I mean, it's a small label. I don't know. It's just one of those things. And it took forever for this to get reissued. And, you know, now people are kind of hip to what's going on with this. The band had like a 10-year hiatus before they came back. And the 2 albums they put out afterwards, I'm not really super familiar with, but they really lost the muse from this debut. This debut is just, I don't know if it's youthful vigor going on, but crushing, absolutely crushing death metal.
And so different from most Finnish death.
Oh yeah,
I mean, more accomplished. Yeah, I mean, you could put it up against most, you know, American like more sound bands at the time.
Oh sure.
In terms of production, in terms of, you know, musicianship, and amazing record.
It's not a Russian boot, Simon.
Nice.
This is no. I actually got this from Ray Prozac. I can't remember what channel he did. Anyway, yeah.
No, that's a good.
If you haven't heard it, it's awesome. Absolutely crushing death metal.
Yeah, it's one. It makes no sense why that one isn't or wasn't in this, you know, that same upper echelon as others, and it just wasn't. Should have been.
Should have been.
Yep. You're up, Hunter.
All right. How about this fella?
There you go.
Confessor, Condemned. My copy, I'll brag here for a second, signed by Steve Shelton, the godlike drummer of this band. And probably one of the 2 reasons that this band gets mentioned. Also the very odd high-pitched vocals. But Steve Shelton is really kind of the linchpin here. This record, among several others, like the first Cathedral record, Old's Low Flux Tube, is just a reminder of why early earache, it's not early earache, but early 90s earache was so special. Just a label that was willing to take some incredible risks, because there is no way that anyone in A&R department would listen to this, would listen to the demos, which are actually heavier and better. Die Bomb actually did a great reissue of those.
That's a great label, by the way. Matt's a super cool guy, and he does a great job with his stuff.
He does, and that's not product placement. Obviously, we're on Die Bomb now. Yep. We started with Tribunal back in the day, but Matt's an amazing guy, yep. Great taste, and I mean, what he puts into those reissues.
And he digs up shit I've never even heard of, like bands. Right. I'm like, what the fuck? Where did this band even come from?
Yeah,
you know?
No, he does a great job. Great job. But yeah, this is so Jeff and I actually back in, so it was, let's see, 02, 03, and 04, Confessor did 3 reunion shows that were benefits to Ivan and his family, the guitarist. And he passed away very, very early and had a wife and a couple of kids. And they did these reunion shows in Charlotte, and all the proceeds went to benefit that family. And Jeff and I were at every one of them. Nice. And that's where I got this guy signed.
Yeah.
And they were amazing. I will have to say, though, at the first show, there was moshing, which I found offensive and bewildering. Yes. It's like, yeah,
It's just to the point that it's going to happen no matter what. It doesn't matter who's playing.
Exactly. It's like, come on, guys. Really?
Yeah. That's a really good pick, Hunter. That's another one that I always associate them with Cynic a little bit in my head, simply because it was another band that couldn't get a whiff of attention at the time it came out.
Oh, man.
That nobody was interested in that album.
Nobody.
It's kind of like, hey, this isn't so bad. And it was just like, just like,
what is it?
Is it just me? Or is it just me? Okay, never mind.
Nope.
Go back to your Biohazard albums.
I was there too.
All right, Alan. Are you good, Alan? Do you need to step out for a sec? Are you good? Everything good?
Let's see. Oh, I'm good for a second.
Okay, right on.
All right. This one, another long-running band. This is a band that's always been just under the radar for the most part. And in the 90s, though, they put out some really strong albums. They're more thought of as an 80s metal band. But I think they really hit their stride in the 90s. And it's a shame because they got overlooked in the 90s, too. Now, they're sort of, the pinnacle for me. They did a bunch of great ones. But for me, Virgin Steel's Invictus really was the top of their career.
Okay.
It's a very strong album. It has a very healthy dose of Manowar going on here in terms of just that very epic, bombastic, sort of power metal / true metal approach. But it's delivered with a lot of power and a lot of conviction, and it's just an incredibly strong album. Very loud production to it. If Virgin Steel had a problem at times, there are albums where the instrumentation is pretty, I don't want to say phoned in, and we'll just kind of leave it at that. But this one, it sounds like they really are pouring themselves into it, and the album just really roars. There's no traces of the silly, almost sleazy tracks they had done here and there in the latest 80s and early 90s. It's just an incredibly good album, and it's kind of lost in their discography. The albums, after this, they got a little more attention with the House of Atreus albums. Mm-hmm. A lot of people, if they do look at the 90s stuff, they look at the pair of the Marriage of Heaven and Hell albums. But and those are good. They're all great albums. But this one, there's just something about this one that has just a very loud, proud, defiant air all the way through it. Daniel DeFay, not only is hitting his classic range, he sounds very sort of angry, sort of pissed off on these songs, which isn't something he often did with his classical training. So yeah, in terms of underrated albums, this is an excellent one from the 90s if you're into that style. And very few people talk about Virgin Steel, period. And when they do, they're always thinking, the really early stuff. They forget about Invictus, and they shouldn't.
Cool.
I've got nothing to add to that. I have not heard any Virgin Steel albums. I saw them play out in Jersey for some Jack Koshket show. There was a curtain separating them with Deceased, I think, at the time. We're playing at the same time.
Oops.
It was rough.
Yeah.
There was way more people watching Deceased than there were people watching Virgin Steel.
Virgin Steel is one of those bands. I mean, their following is in Europe. Over there they will draw well. Yeah, very much like Manowar. They've never had a good following in the U.S., and it's a real shame. They've gone through style changes and lineup changes, but not to the point that it ever derailed them or anything. There really is no excuse for them having gotten so little attention over the years. But such is the way for a lot of things we're talking about tonight, I guess.
Yep.
All right, Marty, what do you got next?
I debated whether or not I should even show this because on paper, this band is actually, they ended up being kind of big. But during the time of this album, they were kind of a product of maybe the wrong country at the wrong time, on the right label, maybe not the right sound, but this is 1993's North From Here by Sentenced. Again, this band ended up being big. I mean, this is on Century Media. And but they're one of those bands that every album, their first 4 albums sound completely different from each other. The first album is just straight up brutal Finnish death metal. This album, their second, is thrashy, melodic-ish kind of death metal. Their third album, which is my favorite, Amok, very gothic inspired metal. Metal was sprinkled with Fields of the Nephilim. And then their fourth album, Down, I want to say is called. It's very much straight up gothic metal. They kind of lost the dark edge and just kind of went with more of a commercially polished sound that you would come to expect from Century Media during this era. But this album ended up in my vehicle again last month after a long hiatus. And man, it blew my mind. I mean, I listened to this album a million times, but it's been so long I'd forgotten what it was about. And putting this on again, it just blew my mind how advanced the songwriting is, how unique they were. Tonelli Jarva's screaming style was very urgent sounding to me. He was on fire. And the way he placed those lyrics, I mean, he's a bass player as well. So, I mean, you know, if you've ever played music while singing, play an instrument while singing, you know, the brain typically tends to follow the riff. It's really hard to break that mold. He really didn't do that here. It's super unique, very interesting riffs. And this is a band, if they would have stayed in this realm, they may have been, you know, they may have evolved into something different. I mean, they definitely got more popular as they went on. Because they embraced more of a commercial, yeah. Alan's saying he's protesting their trajectory, but
Down with Down.
Yeah. What about Amok? Do you like Amok or you hate that too?
Amok is amazing.
Amok is amazing. That's my favorite album by them. But this album is really special in their catalog, man. They broke away from that traditional Finnish death metal and went for something completely their own within, you know, a thrashy death black conglomeration. It's like they threw everything into it. But definitely check out North From Here, a band that who knows if they would have stayed with this, where they would have ended up.
Yeah, and you described it great there, Marty. It hits that nexus of styles so perfectly. It's got, I always think of it as a death metal album, but it's got, you know, shades of black metal in it. It's got, you know, thrash metal underpinnings to it. And it is just such a vicious sounding album. It is very hateful, very spiteful in the delivery. Even, you know, just, it's one of those albums where the song titles really convey the emotion coming through, with titles like, you know, My Skies Are Darker Than Thine and things, just, you know, really venomous vitriol from it.
Yep.
And name another album that sounds like North From Here.
I can't. I you know, initially off the top of my head, I can't.
Yeah, I knee jerk. I can't either. You know, Shadows of the Past, you can come up with plenty of albums that kind of sound like that. It's not a bad album, but yeah, it was, you know, it was part of the pack. But yeah, with North From Here, they really separated themselves with doing something unique. And they did it for one album, and then they went in a completely different direction, made another great album that sounds nothing like it with Amok.
Yep.
But yeah, North From Here was one. I have no idea where I came across that album or first read about it, but I remember it was one I had to special order.
That's what I showed Hunter.
Nobody had it.
There is nothing like that album.
That's just what we were talking about. It's like, name another album that sounds like,
you know, like that nobody talks about is the atheist influence on that album.
Yeah,
that's fair. Yep.
Yeah.
I don't know that.
I never even thought about that, but you're kind of right. Yeah.
I don't know that the atheist was an influence on that album, but I always heard that.
Yeah. I mean,
and look, I absolutely love Amok.
Oh, I love that's my favorite. That's my favorite, hands down. I love that.
Yeah, I even like the Love and Death EP.
Yeah.
But there is nothing like North From Here.
No.
Yeah. It
is an island.
Talk about a band that was going through an identity crisis. So, I mean, their first four albums were completely different from each other. Completely. Before ending on a more commercial version of themselves, which I like the first couple super commercial albums. I don't know. They fit I guess, and it made them fit more within what Century Media was becoming as a label.
Sure. Oh yeah. No. They were absolutely in the mold of that. But I like Shadows of the Past is kind of a rote death metal album, but I think it's a really, really solid early 90s death metal record.
And again, you look at the picture, man, they're kids.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
If you sit back, I mean, like, look at Emperor. Night Side Eclipse they wrote when they were 16.
That really,
I mean, I think of where I was at as a musician when I was 16, and it was terrible.
I was just trying to like make out with girls at like the Valentine's dance.
Lucky you.
Yeah.
I was a fat, goofy looking kid. That wasn't happening.
I wasn't. I wasn't. Reshaping the landscape of metal.
How did they do it? Like Left-Hand Path. They're all in their teens, late teens.
Yeah.
Other than Johnny Headland, who went on to do Unleash, he was the old guy in the band, but
right. And he wasn't that old.
No, he wasn't that old. But in comparison to, I mean, all these albums that we hold in high regard now in our later years, are all written by fucking kids. It just blows me away. Blows me away.
Me too, man.
Alan, do you want me to skip to Hunter?
No, because it's Hunter's turn.
Oh,
you're right.
Well,
sorry, I'm out of whack.
I hope that Forrest Pitts is still on the line.
Yeah,
because I've got one for him.
Good deal. Yeah, I am here, Marty. I'm just reading I'm muted. I'm just reading a story to Dean before I put him to bed.
Right on.
Dead Horse.
Man, that's a band that never clicked with me. I used to have those CDs and I got rid of them. I kind of regret it.
I think that knowing your taste,
I screwed up.
I don't know. I wouldn't say you screwed up, but I would recommend that you check them out again.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially this one, Peaceful Death and Pretty Flowers.
Yeah.
Horsecore is harder going. It's a weird, like kind of hardcore noise rock album. But this is one of those brilliant mutations of thrash metal that only could have happened in the early 90s.
Yeah.
Like, shit like Act 3, for instance.
Yeah.
Like where thrash bands were just like, okay, well, we're not going to go death metal, but what are we going to do? And this is what happens.
Yep.
And this is another one of those things. And it's like, and again, from one of those far-flung geographies. It's a band from Texas,
Yep.
Aside from Pantera, how much metal is there in Texas?
Tension.
Well, Devastation.
Tension.
Who I love.
Wasn't Tension from Texas?
Were they?
I'm going to find out.
Okay.
Because I love that Breaking
Devastation's Idolatry is probably my favorite Texas metal record.
Nope, I was wrong. They were from Phoenix.
Well, depending on where you are in Texas, not that far.
On the west side of Texas.
Big ass state.
Yeah.
Could be Louisiana or Phoenix.
Watchtower was Texas.
Yes, San Antonio.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Oh God. Well, yeah, like.
Yep.
Okay.
If you start going back further, there's a. You get
into, all right, forget everything that I said. Watch. Who is Watchtower?
Wasn't that a Jimi Hendrix song?
I've never heard of them. They have not influenced any of the music that I've made.
Nope, never.
The label that I'm on has not reissued any of their albums.
No one in that band ever went on to be in Dangerous Toys.
No, certainly did not.
In a perfect world, that didn't happen.
Nathan came down, the guitarist in Canvas, not too long ago. He'd never heard Dangerous Toys.
Teasing, pleasing. Baby.
Well, I mean,
Queen of the Nile.
How could you grow up like in the 80s
and not watch
with MTV and not have heard that song?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know either.
It could have been one of those weird therapy moments where he just, pushed it back into his subconscious. Yeah, exactly. This didn't happen, man.
His last
Master was never in a hair metal band.
his last little iota of innocence he was clinging to, and you took it away.
King's X, Slayer SA, Galactic Cowboys.
Hellstar.
Everybody's making us.
Oh
look
God,
bad.
Hellstar. All right, like, okay. Can we edit this?
No. Free balling it, baby. Free ball.
That's quite all
Here
right.
we go.
Yeah. The only thing I'll say in
How can I
I read-
not think about Hellstar?
Hellstar, yeah.
And James Rivera, man. Oh, it's Solitude Eternus.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yep.
Okay, anyway, I've finally redeemed myself.
It's all good. It's all good. Yeah. I did on the McMaster thing. I read a little interview clip with him somewhere once upon a time, and folks were kind of ribbing him about that. And he's like, look, I know, musically, it couldn't have been more different. He's like, but I will say, he's like, Dangerous Toys. It was a band. I made a pretty good amount of money, and I got to tour the world with that band, and I was never going to get to do those things with Watchtower.
No.
Dude,
He's like, I know it looks like a complete sellout, and that the music style couldn't have been more different. But he's like, it was a huge opportunity, and I'll be honest, I'm glad I took it because, yeah, I saw the world and made a good living as a musician with this band, even though it is not anywhere in the same league as the band I had before.
I think integrity is entirely overrated. I would gladly sell myself for any number of opportunities.
A lot of people probably would, yeah. It's very easy for folks to sit back and say, I would never, play, with, danger. I mean, Dangerous Toys. But,
or danger. No. Very few people would play with Danger.
Hey,
Dangerous Toys is a noble option by comparison.
They give you, I don't know,
who's the dad of the Danger guys?
But
like, Alan Coulson.
Here's the contract. We need a drummer to go on, do our 58th Japanese tour of the season, Hunter, and here's a contract with a lot of zeros on it, and a chance to play you in front of thousands of folks. But
I don't even care about the thousand of folks. I just want the money.
Yeah, a lot of folks. Yeah, which you've got a good point there. Yeah, a lot of folks it's easy to armchair quarterback and say I'd never do that, but when those opportunities come up, you got to stop and think about them because yeah.
Okay, Alan.
All right. Next one I will pick.
Danger.
This is another long-running band, has a big following, but their career's been divided up into a lot of pieces, and for the second stage of their career, this is an album I like a lot. It doesn't come up because most folks focus either on their early releases, but the band is Fate's Warning, and the album is Parallels. And Ray Alder came into the band. I felt like it took them a little while to figure out what to do. Some folks like No Exit a lot. That album's never really clicked with me. Perfect Symmetry has, it was very different. It's not bad, but it's got a very, colder,
it's very cold.
Yeah, sound that's, it's not one I revisit very often. But this album, by contrast, has a very warm sound to it. Ray really, is able to, show off, what he's capable of with this album. And it's a really good example for me of, the kind of progressive metal that I really like. The guys are, really showing off their skills, but they're doing it in a very subtle way. They're not going overboard. Every song on here, it's very much, a song-oriented album. But, everyone clicks very well. But, yeah, it's not a Fates Warning album people talk about. They'll talk, of course, the classics, Awaken the Guardian, sure. It deserves every bit of commentary it gets. It's an amazing album. But it might as well be a different band in a lot of ways.
Oh, totally.
It's not the same style as this. And, some of the Fates Warning, later albums, again, they come and go. Some are better and some are worse. But... for this style of metal, I was always very impressed with the album. This was actually the very first compact disc I ever bought.
Oh, wow.
Just randomly. I was like you, Hunter, for a long time. It was just like, but I could buy 2 tapes for the price of one of those things. Why would I ever do that?
Yep.
And about the time the 800th cassette tape broke on me, I was just like, I think I know why I'm supposed to stop buying these now. But yeah, this album, it's easy to overlook because in hindsight, it's not a period of the band that is most popular with folks.
I don't know, man. Like to me, that is a damn near perfect album.
It really is.
So in my Fates Warning world, it's Awaken the Guardian and Parallels.
Yeah. If I had nothing but those two albums by Fates Warning,
you make a really good point though about their journey, because No Exit's definitely a band that's searching for something.
Yeah.
Got a new vocalist. It's thrashier. It's heavier.
Yeah.
Perfect Symmetry. A lot of that stuff was written for John Arch. I mean,
right.
Ray was even trying to sound like John Arch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Ray is literally abusing the upper register of his voice on that album.
Yeah.
It's like going as far as he possibly can.
Mm-hmm.
I love Perfect Symmetry to death. It's definitely the most technical Fates Warning album.
Yeah.
But it's still it is a very cold album.
Yeah.
Very clinical.
Mm-hmm.
And Parallels, like it is like that, like Mathios brought that whole band like into focus on that one. Like, okay, this is what we're gonna do.
Yep.
And I love Inside Out. I am
also good.
Either ambivalent or not entirely on board with everything that they've done since. Pretty much stop it Inside Out.
Yeah. Inside Out, in a lot of ways, it feels like Parallels Part 2.
It does. It very much is.
Mm-hmm.
Very much is.
Yeah, it's similar. It's just, the songwriting's, there's just not quite as many songs that click quite as
strong. And like a lot of people love A Pleasant Shade of Gray. To me, that album sounds like them trying to sound like Dream Theater. And
That's
it's the first time
it.
that Fates Warning doesn't sound like Fates Warning.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good way to put it.
Bit of a bummer for me.
Yeah, it doesn't sound bad, but yeah, they're not.
No,
they're not doing their own thing, and it's it can be it's a good listen. It can also, it's one of those 140-minute,
right,
147-minute song long albums. So it's a long journey to go through.
It's not Crimson.
No.
That
is not.
Like,
yeah.
So.
I did get to see them live on that tour, and they played the entire thing start to finish. And it was really,
the live
really
album
good.
is actually better than the studio album.
Oh, I haven't heard the live album of it, but yeah, I saw him play it live in a little bar it was probably in Lubbock, Texas.
Oh man, we got Tom on the line.
Tom.
Yeah.
So hold up that cover again, Alan, would you?
Mm-hmm.
So is that the same elderly gentleman that's on Dreaming Neon Black, Countdown to Extinction, and the Metallica videos?
Hey,
I'm really
glad Fates Warning had him lie down for the job on this because he's tired. He had a lot
of his name's Nathan Phillips, and he was actually like a renowned cover artist actor. Anytime somebody needed the sickly old man, he was the one they called up.
Dude,
he made an entire career out of it for like 17 years.
That's what I want for myself. In my mature years, I want to be on metal albums.
Yeah,
like you know what? You're dying, but
it's like,
you're in a prison cell, wandering around in a diaper, looking crazy.
It's like, hey,
that'd be great.
Hey, man, are you still feeling kind of sick? Great, we got another photo shoot coming up.
All that appeals to me.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, Marty, I'm going to go tuck the wee one in while you fire up your next choice.
We got it. Next up for me, we're going to USA. Oh, God, I forgot. I believe this is 96. Nope, not the one. Yep, 1996. Crimson Relic.
Oh.
Purgatory's Reign. This is basically Zen from Divine Eve and Rhett Davis from Morgion.
Dude, the Divine Eve EP.
Yeah. And really, this is this could have very well been
dude, Texas. Were they from Texas?
Exactly, Texas. Yep. I'm sitting here holding it's right underneath my face. Texas, right here.
I know.
I've
made so many bad decisions.
This is basically the Divine Eve full length. as far as
Yep.
I'm concerned. And Zan was very much a Celtic Frost fan. You can hear it in every riff he ever wrote. But for
Totally.
some reason, there's just a filth and groove to this shit that just hits so well. And when this thing came out, no one fucking talked about it ever. I mean, this is a band.
Nobody talked about
No
that.
one talked about this. This is a Nuclear OG Press, Nuclear Blast. But no one talked about it, or Divine Eve. And I heard they got back together for a while, but nothing ever happened. I don't know if they're not very prolific writers. I don't know, but if you like Celtic Frost, this is just a better produced. The guitar tone on this is really fuzzy and warm, really heavy head nodding grooves, really memorable writing, super sick but clear vocals, excellent death metal from the US that never really got a fair shake, which is a bummer.
It did not.
Mr. Hunter,
Yes, sir.
drop one on us.
All right. I will. Depressy.
Man, when I saw this on your list, I was like, right on. Their two albums just no one ever talks about them. They're great.
They are. The only thing
That's
that
a weird
anyone
precedent.
in America knows about Depressy is Garden of Shadows.
The band?
Yeah. Who completely ripped off Depressy.
Oh, right on. Is there like an actual picture of the cover on that thing? If
No.
not, I'll go grab it. Hold on, I'll be right back. Talk away. Go ahead.
Okay. Just amazing, like really brutal metal, but also super melodic, super song oriented. This is on Shindy re-release, which sounds kind of sketchy, but
Here's the cover, OG cover.
Thank you, Marty.
And here's their first album, which is just as good.
Here. Hold on 1 second.
A Grand Magnificence. Looks like a black metal album, but it's not. Super, super brutal, heavy death metal with early hypocrisy leanings, I would say. Would you agree with that, Hunter?
Yes.
Early hypocrisy. Yep, nice.
Yes. Totally.
Shindy Productions.
Yeah, like that's exactly it. It's somehow super brutal, but like super classy and melodic. too.
Yes, so good.
Yeah.
I'm curious, did they ever do anything afterwards?
Not that I'm aware, but I can't say that categorically.
They did 2 more
Okay.
albums.
Oh, you got the Metal Archives
I
pulled up?
accessed the Oracle.
The Oracle.
Psychomantium Phenomenon is their 2003 album, and they have a Morph Near Death Experiences album, which came out in 2009. All on Shindy. I've never even heard of Shindy Records before. Who ever heard of Shindy?
Doesn't that sound like
Never heard of it. I don't know any other band that's on Shindy Productions. No, or Shindy Productions.
I mean,
Does not ring any bells.
no.
I would have a hard time trusting anybody at Shindy.
It does kind of sound like you
it's like,
a tax shelter or something.
Yeah, I'm getting fleeced here. Yeah.
All right. Alan.
Okay. Next.
Good call, Hunter. That's a great band. They're good shit.
Let's see. Let's do something a little more doomy. This album, I feel there was a period when it came out, nobody paid attention to it. And there was a period where it sort of had gathered a cult following. And now it almost seems like it's kind of, fallen back into obscurity again, which is weird. But The album is Candlemass. From the 13th
Oh my
Sun.
God.
It's a great album.
Oh, Alan.
It is just
Alan.
I think Hunter likes
I
this
hate to
one.
interrupt you here.
Go ahead.
I have some very, very strong feelings about this album. It's my favorite Candlemass album.
It's Boner Jam, Sweden, right there.
It is as good as any of the classic Messiah Markland era albums.
It sounds like a different band.
Oh yeah. It does. I mean, yeah, they're trying to sound like a different band. They're doing something very different, but it is a really amazing album. The knock against the album, and I don't think it's a very fair knock, but a lot of people are like, they're trying too hard to sound like classic Black Sabbath.
Oh
like,
God, I hate that argument.
Yeah, it's like,
yeah, I've heard that 100 times over.
They're kind of are. I know what they're referring to, but it's like it doesn't really. It's not a copycat. It's not. They're not doing a Sabbath clone thing, and even if they were, they're doing it so incredibly well. Are you going to hold that against them?
Yeah.
But yeah, just an amazing album. The tone on the whole album, is very warm, very deep, very dark, moody. Everything about it is so great. The quiet parts too. It's not just the heaviness. Some of the quieter, softer parts too are just spine tingling.
It's an amazing production.
It really does. Yeah, it's just vibrant throughout the album. If there's one real knock against it, during this phase of the band's career, they just gave up on the concept of song titles. So it's a real mess trying to remember, what does Tot sound like? It's very different than Zog, and I'm not making these song titles up. But whatever. Okay, you don't want to put song titles on. That's fine. The music's incredible, and yeah, I agree, Hunter. I won't say it's my favorite, but it's tied for my favorite with.
It's great.
Pick a Messiah album and pick Epicus, and it's every bit as good as
for me. It's like Epicus and that, and then Nightfall.
Those would be my three.
My two favorite Candlemass records don't even have Messiah on it.
Yeah, those three.
You know what my favorite Messiah record is?
Which one?
Memento Mori.
Oh, interesting.
Rhymes of Lunacy is my favorite Messiah record.
Okay, yeah. I did Memento Mori. I like Messiah on them. That's Mike Weed's still on that album, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. A good guitarist. I just not one of my personal. Something about his tone just has always never quite clicked with me as much on his projects, which heresy perhaps, but yeah, it kept me from getting into the Memento Mori albums as much as I would have otherwise, probably. But that's just me.
Fair point.
Yep. But yeah, anyway, that's again, there was a period where 13th Son really, had gotten, sort of a good adherence of followers, but anymore, you just do not hear that album mentioned the way it should be.
It sounds like a band that evolved into something really special.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like no one really saluted it, so they went back to what they were doing. It's
right.
Where
you
could
get that
where
sense,
could they win if they stayed on that trajectory? It's hard to say.
Exactly what happened. Marty.
Yeah. And I love King of the Grey Islands. I think that Robert Lowe crushes on that album, but I heard that he didn't write the vocal harmonies for that, so that's why it's so good.
I think Life wrote those.
Yeah, because you listen to Black Magic Doom or Death Magic Doom, that album is crap. Holy shit. It's like
I don't mind it. I haven't
Robert
played it in a
Lowe
long time.
he sings all the vocal lines verbatim with the riffs. It's so
I hate that.
It's
he does do
boring.
that.
I hate that.
Yeah, I hate
He does
that.
do that. Yep, that's fair.
Okay, I guess I'm up next, and
You're
going
up next.
to Sweden with Vinterland's Welcome to My Last Chapter.
Oh hell yeah!
1996, and I will
No fashion.
I will say that this is a Russian bootleg because I gave my original copy to a friend who blew a load because I had it, so I gave it to him. But anyway, this is a Russian bootleg of Vinterland. They are a Swedish band. Dawn and Dissection, Caliber, Melodies, and Composition. It is within the same wheelhouse of those two bands, as far as I'm concerned. Members of this band went on to be in The Black, Maze of Torment, and Tyrant. And yeah, I mean, this is a what if album. They did one and done. I think there was a demo in this. And from there, they faded into obscurity and did other things before not doing those things anymore. So, really strong Swedish. It's like that type of stuff that fell into that nebulous territory between melodic death and black metal. Very Swedish sounding. It's good, really good, solid.
Like Sacramentum.
Yeah, Sacramentum worship. Far away from the sun, as you can see the poster right there.
Oh, there you go.
So, yep. Vinterland.
Nice pick.
Hunter, bring it. The thunder.
Human Remains.
Oh, there you go. That is a choice that I would not have guessed you would pick, but very good choice.
Really?
Yeah.
Why not?
I don't know. It makes sense now that I think about it with what the style of music you play. But I mean, that is a band that I so never think about anymore. When that album
no one does.
No, I know. That album dropped. It was like mind blowing.
It is. It's insane.
Yeah.
Like, nobody's ever done anything quite like this. So the volume knobs, Dave Whitty, who's gone on to do a lot of things.
A lot of things.
Yeah. And it's on Relapse.
Yep. When Relapse was a great label. Sorry.
Right. When Relapse was a great label.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, technical, weird ass death metal, but with obvious hardcore influence too.
Yep. It's there.
It's a Jersey thing.
Yep.
I love this.
I love the vocal, the volume pot swells riffs. They do that weird volume swell with it. Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. So, like, I actually heard about them on, I think it was the Death Is 4 comp.
Yep.
And Cradle of Filth was on there too.
Yep.
Which was weird.
Yeah.
And I love the first Cradle of Filth album, by the way.
Which one?
Principle of Evil.
That's my only one I really care about, is the first one.
Well, I mean, it's fucking awesome.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. And everybody hates on Cradle of Filth. That album's fucking great.
They make it really hard to really like. I don't know.
Well, Danny Filth makes it hard to like Cradle of Filth.
Yeah.
That makes it easy to want to select them, but yeah. Yeah. I don't mind the second one either. I mean, it's different, but I even don't mind Dusk in Her Embrace. But yeah, after that, it starts losing the
Vampire EP.
Yeah.
But the first one is like really puzzling.
Yeah.
It's not even really black metal.
No.
It's like goth and D beat.
Right. Yep.
You know? Anyway. I have no idea how we went from Human Remains to that. But
I don't know. That's okay. There was no Kevin Bacon in that equation. All right, Alan, you're up.
Okay. I wanted to pick a really, really obscure one here just because I love the band and I love the album. But I never hear anybody talk about either. This is a band that had its roots in the new wave of British heavy metal. They made one album back then. And the album was so obscure that most people didn't even know the name of the band. When they saw the album, they assumed the album title was the band's name. Part of that was because the album cover was laid out incredibly bad. So it was years before people even realized who the band was that made the album back then. But they, with some lineup changes here and there, the main guy did keep, recording a few things and got another album out in the early 90s. It's a band called Ritual and an album called Valley of the Kings. It's a little hard to describe. It's guitar driven, but it's not like loud, in your face, galloping party stuff. It's got a much more sort of laid back atmospheric sound. It's kind of moody is, I think, the best adjective I could use for it. The main guy behind it was named Gypsy Rebeth. Very good guitarist. He was very good at kind of an emotive sound. I would hazard a guess that he probably was really influenced by like Michael Schenker. Especially like classic UFO, just being able to really get your emotion across without being super flashy at the same time with his guitar lines. But yeah, this is just a really strong album. It still has some new wave of British heavy metal leanings to it, but again, they never sounded like Saxon. They never sounded like Tigers or anybody like that. It's just this more kind of slightly dark, guitar-driven rock metal music that just has always clicked with me. It did get a reissue, so it's not too hard to track down. Shadow Kingdom did this one, and it's probably been 10 years ago now, but he redid both their albums. This was, again, the one from the 90s. The one they did back in the early 80s, yeah, it was called Widow, and on the cover it has this giant Widow logo, and nowhere on the cover does it say Ritual. So everybody had just assumed for years that album was by some band called Widow that they never could track any information down about because they were looking for the wrong band name. And it's the classic, you're digging in the wrong place kind of scenario. But yeah, the Ritual album, if anybody, is just looking for a very obscure one that's, got really good guitar melodies, really good sort of, emotive vibe to it, it's a cool album to check out. Definitely one that has never gotten much respect other than the Shadow Kingdom reissue.
And it's not the same Ritual that was in Southern California, the black metal band?
Not the black metal band from Southern Cal, not the same as the, was it Belgium band that did like a 3-track EP in the 80s? It's like a really short EP that's kind of a cult collector's thing. It's got a gray cover with like a woman with her, an outline of a woman with her hands in the air. I think they were a Belgian band. It's a hard EP to track down now, and I do not own it, so I can't show it off. But yeah, it's a UK band. Gypsy Rebeth has done a couple of self-release or self-released things as well under his own name. They're all really hard recordings to track down. I've got like one 3-track promo DJ CD single thing that took me years to find. And it's so beautiful. I could just sit and play that thing, day after day. It's really great. He was a really talented songwriter who never got a break, which is kind of sad.
Right on.
So that's my really obscure deep one for the night.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go to the Chicagoland area, and we're going to go 1993 with Eroded Thoughts by Morgue. This band put out 1 or 2 demos in this full length and broke up or whatever. They were on Grindcore Records, which may have been the reason why they never really flourished. I don't know. But they're essentially a transitional death metal band, early 90s. So they're a death metal band that still has some thrash influence in their riffs, which kind of sets them apart from a lot of things that were to come and things that were going on in the U.S. Florida in particular, they didn't sound regional. They had their own thing going on, which is why I always liked them. They had really good songwriting, good aggressive song structures, just a good band. I don't know if either of you guys are familiar with this one.
I'm not. No.
Good stuff. Mine is unfortunately all hacked up because I replaced the tape with a promo. But excellent stuff. Excellent death metal from Chicago.
Cool.
Hunter, you are up. Good album.
Truth. Need to Control. One of my favorite albums of all time.
It's really good.
Yeah.
Good album.
It's unlike anything else.
Even from the album before it. I mean,
yeah.
Really, there's a definite style shift there,
What? Yeah. Yeah. Like you know, the album before it's, you know, like everybody called it grindcore.
Yeah.
I'd call it death metal.
Yeah. They got more grind as they went. I mean, the album after that, the EP and the album after that,
Yeah,
definitely
like
grind. Definitely grind.
yeah. But this thing, completely unique.
Yep. Completely unique. Heavy as hell, too.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. I feel very passionately about this album. And like I've tried to get Jeff into this album.
Wasn't he working there during that era?
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
But he's just being an asshole about it.
Right? No, that's a good. I haven't listened to that in a while either. It's been a while since I put Brutal Truth in the stereo.
You should.
I've been so.
There are parts of this album that sound like the end of the world. Like God Player.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Like, where do you go?
Right.
Yeah. All right. That's what I got.
Right on. Alan's next.
All right. I'm going to pull one of my favorite Swedish death metal albums. And it's never on anybody's list, really. But yeah, it's one that I'll reach for if I want that style. Desultory's Bitterness.
Oh, goddamn.
Yep.
I don't even really remember how I came across knowing about this album, but I had it in the back of my mind. And when I was at the local record store one day digging through stuff, I saw it. I was just like, oh, hey, they've actually got that, and bought it. I hadn't heard a thing about it, had not heard any song off of it. Just, somebody had mentioned it or something, read a little blurb somewhere. And yeah, really, really good. It's, most people, talk about, the debut, which is good. I didn't think the debut was as good as the demos. They had two really, well-received demos. And then they did the debut album, which was fine, but it felt just a little bit standard issue by that time. But with this one I always felt like really stood on its own 2 feet very nicely. And it's a lot because of the guitar work that it's, you got a very strong sense of melody. The soloing is very strong, and it really helps the songs differentiate themselves from each other really nicely. I love the cover on it too. It's just a lot of stuff going on there that you can dig into and see. After this, of course, things happened, and music was recorded that maybe shouldn't have been. That's my go-to joke for Swallow the Snake was always that the band should have spit instead of swallowed. But this one is really cool, and it never gets listed with the really fine Swedish death metal albums. But for me personally, again, most folks have probably figured out if they've listened to me ramble about metal enough that I will veer towards the more melodic stuff often. And that's one thing about this album. It's got just that extra little bit of melody over some of their contemporaries that I really love it.
Yeah, Swallow the Snake was an obvious attempt at a Swedish band trying to follow Entombed.
Yeah, well, they had
swing and a miss.
they had lost a really important important member of the band, and you could tell that the songwriting took a completely different direction once they couldn't replace him.
Yep. All right, Hunter. No, me. I'm sorry. I'm back. Sorry, I'm all screwed up here. And this band certainly isn't the most technical death metal band in the U.S. They're certainly not. They were on Red Light Records. I can kind of understand why they went under the radar, but 1994's "Bleed for Us to Live" by Gutted. I get why. I don't get why this band wasn't a little bit bigger. They didn't reinvent the wheel when it came to death metal, but man, they were so groovy, heavy, and well written. The songs on here, they're enjoyable. This is just a fun record to listen to. And one of the guys in this band passed away. Maybe that's why they didn't move on. Afterwards, they had a self-titled album that a guy here in Michigan put out that had I think a couple new tracks and a bunch of other odds and ends. It just never really was the proper follow-up to this album. But this is a super catchy album. Heavy head-banging grooves. I mean, without becoming a parody of itself. It's just really well done death metal. It could have been elevated to another level.
Yeah, it's a really strong death metal album. It's one that's gained I'm surprised, but it's gained a really good cult following over the years.
Yeah,
it
just got reissued.
And there were so many people clamoring for that reissue. I was, really pleasantly surprised to see that people had appreciated that one over time.
Yep. Okay, Hunter, you're back.
Anacrusis.
Yep.
Yeah.
Marty, I know how you feel about this band.
This one is my favorite of the bunch, but I love them all.
Yep.
I would have.
I was privileged to see them in St. Louis a couple years ago.
I'm trying to get like an actual. There was like a very small amount pressed of that concert of video.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's hard to find. It was sold out and never repressed apparently.
So I guess that you would call this progressive metal.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, here it's thrash, but a very strange.
Yeah.
Very strange thrash breed for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, they really, everything after their first demo / album, it's all very strange, but in very cool ways.
When you guys on Radical Research did that expose on Anacrusis, I wish you spent more time with the solo album because I love that thing. Initially, the drum machine really pissed me off and threw me off. But once I got past that and listened to the songs, it was still this. It was still, I mean, obviously, Ken Nardi was the heart of this band.
Ken Nardi, his identity is always going to come through on those songs.
Yeah.
Always.
And the great thing is he's got a new solo album coming out on Dive Bomb soon.
Yep.
So, I've heard a couple songs. I don't know that I like the songs as much as the last solo album, but I'm going to wait until I hear the whole thing as a whole,
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that one, the one you picked, Hunter, that's definitely, that's my favorite in their catalog. That album is so tight. That's
perfect.
It really is close to it. Nardi's just vocal control. He knows exactly when to scream. He knows exactly when to whisper.
And his screams are demonic.
Screams and whispers.
Yeah, got there. But yeah, you're right, Marty. I mean, his control is amazing. His range is amazing. But everything, the songwriting through that whole album is just jaw-droppingly good.
Is there a better song than Sound the Alarm? There really is not.
No.
There's so many good ones on that album. I would have pulled that album, but I knew you were pulling it.
And you know what? I actually got to meet him.
Oh, really? Cool.
He was the nicest guy in the world.
Sweet.
I've heard other people who met him say the same thing, that he's just, super.
No, he was a sweetheart.
You want to talk about a guy that's had a very long career and has seen a lot of weird ups and downs. He's always been an underdog. I mean, that band...
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Anacrusis in a lot of ways is like Sadus. They kind of fit into that realm of thrash that is underappreciated because they're not like everybody else. I mean, my teenage years, man, songs like "Stop Me," "Terrified,"
Terrified.
The lyrics on this were like they spoke to my. They spoke to me when I was a teenager, and I just really connected with this album. But everything they've done has been absolutely glorious, and to hear that was it "Dreaming of the Past" or "Dreaming with the Past," that 2 CD solo project that he did was so good, and it was so long, but it was so good.
It is long.
It's long, but you got to get through that.
Yeah, it's well worth the effort.
It's worth the effort for sure. his vocal, I just can't believe that, you know, this is a band that used to tour, and he was out there, you know, abusing those vocal cords, and even to this day, he still completely crushes. Like he never lost a beat, you know. Great pick.
Yeah, absolutely. It would have been one of the first things I put on my list if it wasn't on your list.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I had to pick it anyway. This was 1990. And,
That's still fair.
So good. Good.
Yeah, Terrified was the first song I ever heard by that band.
Yeah.
It just was just like, oh, this is so insanely over the top.
Crazy riffage, and just that.
Yeah.
The chorus being screamed at the top of his lungs over and over at the end of it.
Just so much conviction. I mean, it's one word, but there's so much conviction.
But the thing of it is, like, he does it so effortlessly.
Yeah.
Now, like, seeing him live, that scream, like, I couldn't believe it.
How long was that show?
Oh God!
Did they play pretty much every album?
They played the whole catalog.
Jeez.
It was like 5 hours.
I saw that. I really wanted to go to that, but I don't know what the fuck was happening at the time. But
yeah,
I wanted to go to that thing so bad. It would have been such a great show.
It was, but it was brutal.
Yeah, it's an endurance race.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, Alan's next.
Okay. So we'll do a little traditional, little power metal flavor here. Another band that's never really gotten a lick of attention, and it's sad because they did some very cool stuff early on. Brazilian power traditional thrash metal Viper. This is their third album, Evolution.
Great album.
Oh.
It looks more like a Pink Floyd album cover than a power metal one, but they're from Brazil. They can interpret it differently. That's fine. The deal with Viper was their first two albums featured a young Andre Matos, who after the second album went on to sort of bigger and more publicized things with Angra. Had a long run with him. With a lot of cool albums, but they got into a much more they very much got into the melodic, lighter side of power metal, but did good stuff. And so Matos was out of the band after their second album, which is an amazing album, but it's an 80s album, so I couldn't pick it tonight.
Theater of Fate.
Theater of Fate, that's the one.
Yeah.
Yep.
I just ordered that CD. Matt from Dive Bombs got a used CD thing going on, and that was on there, so I just put in the order for that.
Great album. Hopefully it's a remastered version that they worked on the production a bit. That was the production hurt that album originally, but it's an amazing,
awesome album.
Listen. Yeah. And with Matos out of the band, there really was this kind of question mark of what are the guys going to do without him? Or is it just time to fold up shop? And they didn't. They went ahead and reformed, and 3 years later they put this album out. And it's a little different. They did not try to replace Andre with somebody similar, and it was probably a good thing they didn't. He would have been a very tough act to follow. The comparisons would have never stopped. So instead, they just went with a more traditional vocal approach. They kind of set aside the whatever you want to call it, the neoclassical style, and just went for really put our heads down. Play really fast, really good 4/4, no frills, headbanging heavy metal goodness. And it absolutely rips. It's very straightforward, no frills, nothing fancy, but it's a very solid listen. I didn't know what to expect when I got it because I was a big fan of Theater of Fate. And it was really one of those things where like, well, okay, somebody had it on a sale list. I originally got it on vinyl. And it was just like $5 or something. I was like, okay, I'll give $5 just to see what the heck they did next. And I was like, wow, they actually put together a really, really good album. Again, a little different style. It doesn't have those flourishes that they were perfecting on Theater of Fate. But this one, if you just want a good, solid slab of no frills heavy metal, this is a nice album. Really catchy songs, short, to the point. They're here. They're going to do their thing. And no bones about it. So yeah, they stuck around. I think they broke up. They may have broken up at one point and then got back together. Regardless, they did more things along the way. But yeah, Evolution was the one that I felt like really, really held up quite well.
Okay. Next up, we're going to 1992 and 1993. Seance for Never Laid to Rest and Salt Rubbed Eyes.
Yeah.
This band,
thought of that in a while.
they've had a couple things against them. One, we'll have to look at them themselves. They're not the most prolific band. I mean, 92 and 93 were probably their most prolific years. Their next album came out in 2009, Awakening of the Gods, which was also just as good. It's really good. But members of this band went on to be in Witchery or Satanic Slaughter and Witchery. But this is Swedish death metal that doesn't sound like everything in Sweden. Again, this is kind of like Demigod, where Demigod was just a really brutal, churning, unrelenting death metal assault. Seance was kind of in the same boat. The Salt Rubbed Eyes, the claim to fame on this was the super loud bass tone, which honestly is very cool. It gave it a very unique sound. It made it more aggressive somehow, just a super distorted.
One of the heaviest death metal albums ever.
It really is. And just, their vocalist is just absolutely scathing. I mean, everything about both of these albums is great. Other than the fact that they're on Black Mark Productions, which, the only bands most people ever know on that are Bathory and Edge of Sanity, which are both great fucking bands. Don't get me wrong, but there was some other great shit on Black Mark.
Yeah. Memento Mori.
Memento Mori, exactly. Early Cemetery. I even like some later Cemetery too, but
yeah, me too.
These are absolutely great. Seance is absolutely great. Overlooked, and like I said, Awakening of the Gods. Definitely check that album out as well. It's a scorcher. Surprise, and it's another one that came and went. No one ever mentioned it. No one ever talks about that band.
Yep, that's a good call, Marty. I hadn't thought of them in a long time.
Hunter.
Algion.
Yeah. That album, though?
Yeah, dude. Yeah, that album.
I'm a Vox Clementis or whatever.
Yeah, we disagree.
Agree to disagree, sir.
Yeah, I love this album.
It's weird
like
one.
Nothing else.
Yep.
The EP is fine.
Yeah.
I don't love it.
The full length is good. It'd been way better with real drums. And it's really long. It's
probably too long.
It's too long.
Yeah. But I love it. And it's like full of ideas that nobody else really explored.
You're right.
So
it's kind of a weird vocal. It's been a while since I've listened
to that too.
The vocal is like more of a speaking voice, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah,
Sprech song.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then after that, they put out one album.
Yeah, there were tracks on this on the Gummo soundtrack.
You're right. Spider put that together.
Yep.
AION.
Very disturbing movie.
that movie. That movie is just so not. I just don't get that stuff. The chair wrestling was so you.
Yeah, I don't either.
I just don't. It just don't. It's not my wheelhouse.
Yeah, me either.
But it's cool that made it onto the soundtrack, along with Bethlehem and other bands.
Yep. Burzum, I think, was on there.
Yeah, Burzum was on there.
Yeah.
All right, Alan.
All right. Next up, old cult favorite band that has just resurfaced and come back with a really good album. I'm pretty sure they only made one album in the 90s, and it's an album that got buried very quickly. It got zero push from the record label. Some of the band members themselves spent years trashing this album, and I never understood why, because it's got some of their finest music on it. Paradise Lost with Kira Vungel.
91.
Makes it into the decade. Yep. Yes, it has some weak stuff on it. Now, there's no doubt. There's a lineup change here. Everybody was not quite on the same page with some of the material, so there are a few duds on this album. There's no doubting it. But at the same time, there's some incredible Keith Ungle music here as well. The band had, I think they pretty much saw the writing on the wall with the whole process. They weren't happy with the producer. The record label was obviously sort of just phoning it in. I think they knew their days were numbered, that they were going to get this album out the door, and that was pretty much going to be where they'd have to call it a day. And so, Ron Garvin, famously for years, just hated talking about this album, just wrote it off as a piece of crap that they didn't have much control over. They didn't like the final mix of it whatsoever, and just weren't allowed in the control room. All the kind of classic horror stories you hear, from that day and age. But yes, if you can get past the two or three really, and just a good example of where it feels like the band knows their time is up. There's a cover of Crazy World of Arthur Brown's Fire on here. And if there was ever a song that was perfect for Keith Ungle to cover, that would be it. And it's not a good cover. The band, there's no energy to that cover. There's no punch to it whatsoever. It really feels like the band is just going through the motions, play the cover song, and the song was tailor-made for them, but and it misses. But there's a lot of, you get through those misfires, and the good stuff on here, like Join the Legion, is classic Ungle. The closing trilogy, though, with Paradise Lost as the high point, is arguably the finest thing they've ever recorded. Those songs are crushingly heavy. Tim Baker, even by his own standards, the vocals are just howlingly insane on those trilogy of songs. The good on here far, far, far outweighs the bad. And I get the band feeling very burned on the album, and not ending their initial run on the note they would have preferred. But it is not a bad album whatsoever. It's actually got a lot of incredibly strong Keith Ungle material. And it's one of those albums that, you talk Keith Ungle and everybody wants to talk King of the Dead. Great album. People want to talk, A Frost and Fire, cool album.
Yeah.
But this album has any songs from those, there are songs on this that will stand up to anything else in their catalog, by my standards at least. Paradise Lost should not be overlooked the way it sometimes is.
Over the years, I've heard a lot of bands say that they were, kicked out of the mixing room and this and that. Can you imagine Hunter being a musician and not being able to have a voice in the way your album sounds?
No.
That is such a thing that is come and gone.
Deeply offensive.
It'd be, and I understand if you go into a studio and, you kind of get what you get. Depending on your producer, depending on the tech that he's using to record you. But still within that realm of your limitations, you still have a say in it,
Yeah. It's your music.
It's your music. And then to hear like Paradise Lost and, countless other bands that say, we hate the way the mix turned out. We had no say in it. How can you not have a say in it? I mean, I get if the band and everybody put in their 2 cents and, you're at the end of your limitations, you get what you get. That's just one thing you have to make, amends with. But to be thrown out of the process is just fucking gross.
Yeah,
it's just gross.
I agree.
I don't get that. But anyway, good pick. Another band that should have been bigger, but they're still kicking, so there's still time.
Yep. They are one of the.
They are. I feel like they've got more of a presence now than they've ever had.
Yeah.
They are finally getting their due. They are one of those exceptions where the band has come back out of cryonic sleep, and they're doing just as good as they did back then.
Yep.
And they're finally, and now they're able to actually sort of reap some of that appreciation that's developed over time. Kind of like Manila Road, coming back in the 2000s and finally getting their due. I think
they're exactly one of those bands.
Yeah.
They've
broke his helm.
All that stuff, for sure.
Yeah,
they're all in the same wheelhouse.
Yep.
all amazing stuff. And yeah, all those bands. It's nice to see those bands be able to get some of the recognition, even though it came way too late.
All right, I'm going to Missouri, 1992 and 1994 with Time Ghoul.
Oh,
yeah.
This is a product. This is a band that didn't make it beyond the demo realm. I mean, it's really sad and too bad, because the Tumultuous Travelings and Panoramic Twilight demos, which the Panoramic Twilight demo has got a much better production. But this is some really kind of forward-thinking, groundbreaking for the time death metal. Very sinister and complex.
Yep.
Otherworldly harmonies. They didn't sound Florida. They didn't sound Swedish. They definitely had their own thing going on. You want to call it cosmic. You want to call it whatever the hell you want to call it. But Dark Descent put out a collective archive of their 2 demos. It's a 2 CD set. Really worth getting. This is really good, strong death metal. Really, like I said, forward thinking. Sounds like nothing from this era. Excellent death metal. And if they put out a full-length album and continued on it, who knows what they would have done,
Well, the delta between like the 92 and the 94 demos is pretty exceptional.
It is exceptional. I mean, the 92 demo is really good, but 94, so, initially you think it's because it's a brighter production, but no, the songs are better.
No.
Everything about it is like they realized where they were heading.
No. That was a band that really, truly evolved.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yep. Great pick, Marty.
All right. Mr. Ginn. Yeah.
Mind Rot.
So good.
Nice.
So, for anyone who doesn't know, this was a band that was a part of, the Orange County, Southern California, power violence, hardcore scene, but evolved into something completely otherworldly.
True.
Signed to Relapse, absorbed, influence from Fields of the Nephilim, Bauhaus.
Yep.
And just like there's D-beat in here. The production is Mike Barnes, who produced Fearless Undead Machines.
Yep.
Completely amazing.
So dense. The sound on this album is dense, but colorful.
Dense.
Yeah.
That's the word, man.
Yep.
That's the word. Yeah. It's just thick with dread and everything.
When those Carl McCoy vocals come in, it's like, yes.
Yeah.
So sad. So good.
It is. And again, one of those albums that just never got any traction.
Nope.
Yep.
Yeah.
Really?
My little
was good.
Yeah. My personal mind rot story. Marty, you may or may not remember this, but you traded me a copy of the Soul CD back around 1999.
I fucked up. I thought I had it. I was looking through the collection like I thought I fucking had that, but
well, you did 21 years ago.
What did I trade it for? Do you remember?
I do not. I know we traded 2 CDs for 2 CDs, and that's the only one of the 4 I remember. I have no idea what I sent you, and I don't know what the other title was you sent me. But I know you sent me Soul by Mind Rot, and that song Incandescence is the song for me off that album.
Yeah.
Anytime with the iPod, if I'm doing any kind of playlist that's got anything remotely, sort of atmospheric on it, that's, the one track, I always drag that one over and add that to the playlists.
Yep. Awesome. Okay. Next for me, we're going to Germany. The first 2 albums that came out respectively in 97 and 99, and that is German's Nagelfar.
Oh, man.
Hunnen Grab I'm Herbst, and the second one, which is my favorite of the bunch, I cannot pronounce it, and I'm not even going to fucking try. But there is a distorted bass and intensity on the songwriting of this album is just immense. And then in 2001, their final album was Virus West.
That's the only one I know.
Oh my God. This album is has a little bit of a black metal spirit in it, which they evolved out of on this. And this band, for all of you who do not know, after this band broke up, the main songwriter for this band went on to do Ruins of Beverast, which is basically the spiritual successor to Naglfar. The sound is very similar, especially in the early albums, like Unlock the Shrines and stuff. Sound like it could have been the fourth and fifth albums of Naglfar. But this shit is so good, especially this. If you're going to check out one, Hunter, get this one.
Okay.
I mean, they're all good, but this one has just got an intensity to it. It's just there's like a break where the bass kicks in, and then everything comes in with it. You just like grit your teeth, like, yes, so good, so good. And this is another one of those bands that, like, again, the people who know, but I think a lot more people jumped on to the Ruins of Beverast train due to their, the labels they're on. I don't know, but this was on, well, it says SPV, but Kettlehund Records, Napalm Records. They didn't have a lot of buzz behind them back in the day, but all these albums are really good. Good stuff. And Mr. Ginn is next.
Rodica.
I've never heard of that band.
Don't know this one.
No one has. Century Media.
Okay.
So this is a band from Chicago who was like loudly touted by Borovoy Kurgan.
Okay.
Kind of commercial hard rock and power metal and progressive metal all at the same time. I love this record.
They didn't go on tour with Stuck Mojo then.
They did not.
Good.
They did not. I have seen Stuck Mojo at a bare minimum of 4 times.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, I'm from Georgia.
Right.
Yeah. So this kind of thing that happens.
They're on the bill, yeah.
Yeah, they suck.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah. They've always sucked. This band, however, does not suck. Just super catchy songs, like amazing musicianship. Probably get this for like $2 on Discogs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's got a $2 album cover.
It does. and all yeah, like I don't know what their band name means. Rodica. Malice and Tranquility. Shitty album title. Like everything about this should suck.
Yeah, logo, no logo, just a font.
Like there's not, yeah, exactly. It's not even a logo. So, but I'm here to tell you, like this album needs a friend, and I'm that friend.
Right?
Yeah.
Where did that come out on?
Century Media, 1997.
Century Media again. That's right.
Yep.
Yeah. No, that's interesting because, yeah, I mean, it's the kind of album we joke about it, but Marty's right. I mean, most people would not give that a second glance.
No. Everything about this says turn away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hunter, do you know, did they hang around for a while as a band after that?
They did. They actually released another album.
Okay.
But they slogged through the demo circuit for a long time.
Requiem for the Innocent is their second album.
Yep.
1998. And it's got a 40% rating on Encyclopedia Metallurgy.
That's probably fair.
Right.
I've never heard it, but yeah.
Well, you pulled out a super obscure one because I've never even heard of that either, for sure.
No. But no, that's cool because, yeah, now it's something I can file it in the back of my brain. And when it shows up, like in that $2 used CD bin at a flea market, somebody will get my $2.
I am definitely looking for Last Crack. That's for sure.
Well, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah. Okay, Alan.
Alrighty, let's do some very proggy metal. This band's been around forever. My understanding is they have a good following, but I never hear anybody talk about them, show their records, mention them in passing, so I'm going to throw it on out there. It's Denmark's Royal Hunt, and I picked Paradox, which I think, at least among Royal Hunt fans, is considered probably their crowning achievement. They've got a lot of very good albums. This is very much in the progressive metal vein. The main songwriter is the keyboard player, which will tell you a lot about what it's going to sound like. But the musicianship's always strong throughout. They've had some very good vocalists over the years. They've gone through a few vocalists. The original vocalist was probably the weakest of the bunch, but then they had DC Cooper on albums, including this one, and he's got a fantastic voice. He left for a while.
Amazing solo album.
Yes, his solo album is really, really good. And I'm usually not a huge fan of the solo album direction. They usually just feel like a lot of throwaway kind of songs. But no, the DC Cooper solo is great. You're right, Hunter. I'm glad you mentioned that. John West has been did several albums with the band and sounded really good too. He also sang with Feinstein on his solo album, which was also a good solo album. But Royal Hunt's Paradox, it's sort of a conceptual album talking about religion and beliefs and such, but it's not like a story album where we have to listen to it chapter by chapter or anything. But it's just an incredibly well-crafted album. They've done the entire thing live. It sounds amazing when they perform it live, start to finish. And again, while I think folks that are really into this style recognize it, and tout it pretty highly, it should have a wider following. It's good enough, and it is definitely digestible enough that it should have a wider recognition in heavy metal circles. So, folks, get out there and check out. Start with the DC Cooper albums, or even I'd say start with the DC Cooper albums. The John West ones are good too, but Royal Hunt is really solid stuff. They're not getting the mentions they ought to. They're still around. I think they've put out an album within the past year. I haven't heard the new one yet, but they're still going.
Cool.
Well, if the Royal Hunt album and a bunch of other things have proven anything this evening, what do a lot of underappreciated albums have in common? Shitty covers. Disgrace, Grey Misery. This is a Finnish band. This album came out in 1992, and it is Finland's youth ripping off the Carcass symphonies of sickness style. But a lot grittier and filthier. This album rules. This is one of those get drunk, headbang, and air guitar, oranges to the sky type album for me. And, why this band never got bigger is kind of their own fault, I guess. Well, for one, they were on Modern and Primitive, which is an Australian label. Their trajectory after this album got more punk and weird. I often heard that they changed direction, so I never really followed them after this album, but this album's great. Absolutely great, crushing Carcass worship from a bunch of Finnish youth that hopefully didn't pay too much for pink fonts and shitty album covers and pink everywhere, but
totally unique in their discography.
Yeah, I see. I haven't heard anything past it. Does it get worse or is it good?
It's like Death and Roll. No. I actually like a lot of their stuff after that.
See, I wish I could say I've never investigated it. So
yeah.
Okay, Hunter. You have any left? You're probably getting towards the end.
I am. I've got 2 left.
Right on. Me too.
Thought Industry.
Your podcast made me want to check that band out. They're a band that's always slipped through the cracks for me.
Yeah. Strange band. So, like, the first two albums are definitively metal. And then after that, things go astray.
off the rails.
Not in a bad way, because my favorite Thought Industry album is actually the last one. But so we did a podcast on this band, and we actually had Jason Walton pick all the songs,
right?
Because he is a massive Thought Industry fan.
Right on.
So this album, probably the most famous thing about it is that Jason Newsted turned Brian Slagle on to this band. This is Michigan metal, Marty.
See, I thought they were Wisconsin.
They're from Kalamazoo, man.
Oh, right on. Yep.
Yeah. So,
nice.
Yeah. So you owe your state a favor.
Yes. Many.
Yeah, me too. But like, it's just insane. I would call it progressive metal, but that does it a disservice. It's impossible to categorize. It is the product of a bunch of restless minds, essentially. And like the Dolly cover,
yep,
kind of describes what's in store for you.
Nice.
Yeah.
From Michigan Brethren, I need to check them out. Alan.
All right. Someone made passing reference to this one earlier, and it was in the stack. Great album from Black Mark. Cemetery's Black Vanity, which I believe is their third, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yep, third.
Yep.
This was a band that went through a lot of identity changes early in their career before settling into a style.
Yep.
Every album's different almost.
They really are. You've got Evil Shade of Grey, just has really great, creepy, is sort of Swedish.
Dude, is there another guitar tone like Evil Shade of Grey?
If there is, I don't want to hear it, because that is one of the few guitar tones that legitimately creeped me out.
And how did they get that? And in the title track, how in the hell did they get that pick noise in it?
I don't know.
Did they mic the
I don't know.
hand? I don't know.
I don't know, but yeah, I can remember it was also Evil Shade of Grey was one of the last albums I bought on cassette. And I remember, I'd have that in the Walkman walking across campus, at night. And yeah, you literally get paranoid, shit's going, what the hell's out there, just from that guitar tone. Just really unnerving. But then you got, Godless Beauty, and it's a really good album. It's cleaned up it's cleaned up in a lot of ways. It's
weird.
Still heavy, still deathy, but
I love that album.
Yeah, it's a very cool album.
Yeah.
And they kind of continue a little bit in that trajectory, with this one. This one, is getting into, I guess you say it's got gothic overtones to it. It's getting a more straightforward sound. But the songwriting here is just really incredible. It's, again, drawing a little bit on that Carl McCoy style for the vocals. It's very much drawing on that kind of atmosphere. This is fall weather music. This is what you listen to on October nights, once the air is finally chilled down and it's getting dark earlier and the clocks have been rolled back and all that kind of stuff. Every song on it is just very strong, very unique. This is one that, I used to drive the college radio station metal show hosts nuts, because I would just call them and be like, play a song off of Black Vanity. Okay. As soon as they do it, I call, play a different song also from Black Vanity. We're not supposed to play the whole fucking album, don't you? I'm just like, has anybody else called in any requests in the past 2 hours? Okay, we'll play a damn song. So yeah, I would get them to, yes, I'd be sitting there with the tape recorder, splicing it together. I had 6 out of the 10 songs or whatever on a TDK tape before I could finally find the CD. Yeah, Black Mark, not known for great CD distribution in Northwest Ohio in the early and mid
Or
90s.
America really at all. I mean,
No, it was a pain. I had to fly to Arizona to get the damn CD.
that's dedication, my friend.
Yep.
Now, to be fair, I was there for other reasons, but yeah, as soon as I was flying to a paleontology conference, and the first thing I did once we got out of the airport was me and my buddies hit the local record store, and it was just wall-to-wall metal. We spent hours in there buying everything we'd been hearing and couldn't find back in Ohio.
Yep.
But yeah, this one is a very underrated album. It's a copy of it sat in the local used bookstore for like 3 years for $5, and nobody would buy it, and it just made me sad every time I saw it. So yeah, a lot of bands, as you got into the mid late 90s, did that transition towards the more, the more stripped down, gothic influenced sound.
Well, Sentence is a prime example.
Sentence was
they
the very
toured
first
with Cemetery on the Amok album.
Yep. Catatonia did the exact same thing. And I did not like either of those bands' directions. I thought Sentence got very dull when they went down that pathway. Catatonia could, write a decent song in that style here and there, but I didn't want to sit through a whole album of them. They sounded very sad in kind of just this weird, weary, tiring way. But Cemetery didn't. Cemetery still had.
Sentence was just boring.
Yeah. It was just.
They got very commercial.
Yeah, it was very digestible, which is okay.
Not in a good way.
No, in a very boring,
I don't even mind when bands get commercial, if they're good at it.
Sure.
Sentence just sounded dull as shit.
Well, like Cemetery. I mean, their Sundown and Last Confessions. It was very commercial in that gothic rock style, but I liked the albums. I thought they were good. Catchy, memorable. Anathema kind of went down the same road too.
Yeah.
Anathema,
but they were a little more highbrow about it,
They went a little more post rock maybe with their sound, but all those albums you just mentioned, Marty. This one really established. This one, Cemetery, found their voice, and they stuck with it on the subsequent albums, and those are very good albums too. But I always, out of the three, this is by far my favorite. I think it's got the best atmosphere to it, the best songs. Everything fits together. The production is perfect for the album here. And nobody really. Cemetery gets a mention here and there, but they never get mentioned. You talk to someone who's really into later Sentenced, and a lot of folks are, or really into later Catatonia. They really are. So it's like, hey, what do you think of Cemetery? And it's like, who? Just like, oh, you're one of them.
Yeah.
Hi.
But the funny thing is, you listen to Evil Shade of Grey, that crushing guitar tone, and then Godless Beauty. It sounds really thin, and I mean that's the one thing about that album. If they had a thicker guitar tone, I think that album would have been maybe a little better. I like that album. I've always liked that album. I like the songs on it.
The songs are great,
but the guitar tone is very thin.
Yeah,
I don't know if thin is the word I'm looking for, but there's not a lot of depth to the sound. It's really weird. It's a very thrashy guitar tone, like late '80s thrash tone. I don't know. It's weird. The band was always in a state of flux until Black Vanity, where they finally congealed. I'm up. Okay.
You're up.
I talked about this, was it 2 weeks ago? This is a band from Michigan, another Michigan band, and they have members of Masochist, Psychosis, and Ariak. Lucifer's Hammer, The Mist of Time. This is a self-released album, and I don't really know if this band did much outside of Michigan. I mean, every time you go to a death metal fest in Michigan, Todd, the singer for this band's mom, was the promoter that did all those fests. So I've seen this band probably 5 or 6 times over the years. And this album, they've got two. Their album after this is even more obscure and hard to find. But this one is very much a Bathory, Hammerheart era mixed with black metal, second wave black metal vibe. This came out. When did this come out? 97. It's just really atmospheric, well done black metal in the Bathory tradition. If you mix the first era of Bathory with the Viking, it's the Viking era plod, the mid-pace doomy black metal plod. It's this album. It's should this band have been huge? Probably not, but this was just a really well done album that I always listen to and see the band live and wonder why they weren't better. A lot of keyboards on this. Good shit. Atmospheric Michigan black metal. And Hunter,
My last pick.
am I showing this off or what? Am I holding up the picture of this while you talk about this or no? Oh, you didn't pick that one. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's your last one?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll go with the other one then.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I've never heard this band either. Mine over 4.
Really?
No.
I've heard them, but it's been ages.
Amazing band. One of my favorite bands. So this is their second to last album. Came out in 1993 on Restless. So they're another one of those bands, like just kind of impossible to categorize, like post-thrash, alternative metal, I guess you would call it. But just deeply, deeply awesome. So actually Spike Jones, Spike Xavier, their vocalist. Spike Jones was the video director. Spike Xavier, their vocalist, was actually invited to audition for Anthrax after Joey Belladonna left.
Huh. Or was kicked
out before John Bush. Yep. Just
That's cool.
Fantastic band.
Huh.
I can't say enough good stuff about them.
It's another one of those, the way you describe it, another one of those bands that are so unique and odd that there's no way in hell that the wider populace of metal fans are going to glom onto that. You know, it takes a special classification of people that like different, something way different, you know.
And this is way different.
Yeah.
And
very cool.
It just never quite caught on.
Huh.
It's a bummer.
Weren't they? Restless was a bigger label. I mean, how many albums they put out? I've heard the name before. Did they go on to a bigger label, or is Restless kind of?
I think Relativity distributed them.
Right.
I think that was it.
Oh, my kid was coming down here. Sorry, Alan, you're next.
Okay, so my last one then. I want to do this one. This is a band. A lot of people will recognize this name. When they get talked about, everybody wants to talk about the first album, which is good, but they ought to be talking about the second album. They should be looking into the Mirror Black.
I agree.
That old guy has made a appearance twice on this list tonight.
He's doing a little better. He's on his feet now.
Yeah.
He's not in the bed.
He's on his way to his bedroom to rest after this long walk.
Right. Yeah.
He's getting out to
he's
get
going
the
on
circulation
the
going a little bit.
Yeah.
He's got a 6-hour photo shoot tonight for Fate's Warning, so he's got to lay there perfectly still for a while. He's got to get some exercise while he can. But yeah, this one, everybody wants to talk Refuge Denied, which is a good album, but for me, it's a front-loaded album. You've got a couple of just absolute killers at the start of that album, and the rest of the album then is okay. This album, though, this is an eerie, very foreboding album. The cover art speaks very well for the contents. Refuge Denied, again, great album, but it has, it's an 80s heavy metal album. This is different. This has a little darker edge. It's slower. It's music that's meant to make you kind of stop and think and look over your shoulder, not to just, throw up the horns and bang to. Warrell Dane just is really, good vocalist all the time, but really on top of his game with this material. Like some of the other albums we've talked about, like, the Kevin Nardys and such, he knows when to back it off, and he's equally effective throughout his range on this. And just the way it came out, right at the beginning of the decade, and even the intro song, sort of the theme is with future tense, and looking at the next decade and what will the 90s hold, and they're not doing it in this sort of positive, uplifting light that you kind of had going into the 90s. A lot of people, again, if that was before your time and you're watching this, you're going into the early 90s and it's all about, the Scorpions and Wind of Change and, the Cold War is wrapping up, the wall is down, life is meant to be good. And Sanctuary is kind of hinting at, don't count your fucking chickens just yet. You don't know what's coming and what's not. And it may not be everything you think. Just really, really excellent delivery with that kind of creepy-ish material on it. I was always really disappointed that the band fell apart after this and didn't get to follow it up properly. Yeah, obviously Nevermore went on and became a much bigger entity. It was never something, I never quite got into the Nevermore catalog, except
I can only get into the first Nevermore record.
Yeah, the one I liked was one of the later ones with Dead Heart in a Dead World.
Okay.
I did like a lot of the songs on that album, but otherwise I just never could quite get into Nevermore. But yeah, Into the Mirror Black is a really strong album from the 90s that just doesn't get the attention it deserves from my little perspective.
Great band.
Totally agree.
Both albums are great.
Amazing band. Yep.
Definitely better.
Yep. All right, Marty, bring it on home for us.
Well, I have two more. Hunter,
That's
you're
right.
done?
I'm done, man.
Okay. Well, I thought you were going to show this album, so I pulled it out. But
Well,
again shall be. And this album is probably one of my favorite Norwegian black metal albums.
totally.
From a band that, they had a very small buzz when they came out. In fact, I think Jeff Wagner wrote a piece on them in Maniacs, and that's what got me to check this album out.
It probably was Alicia Morgan.
Was it Alicia?
Yeah.
What year was this? I can't
95.
see. 95. This album is amazing. Probably the best example of Norwegian black metal. And the songs are largely mid-paced, full of passion. A lot of the 6-string, Norwegian sound. They play all 6 strings. I don't know what the hell you call that, other than it's hard. And their album after this, Dawn of the Dying Sun, is really good as well. But there's something really magical and special about this. Pure atmosphere, triumphant, very triumphant feel. From the opening seconds of Pagan Triumph, and God, I can't pick out a single song. They're all good, and absolute classic that it's never really talked about. They ended up having to change their name to Hades Almighty because the Jersey thrash band Hades sued them.
Mm-hmm.
But absolutely great. Before I move on to the last one, do you guys want to talk about this before I jump off of it?
Yeah, really one of my original, I was very suspicious of black metal, 94, 95. I was a death metal guy.
Yep.
And I thought it was all image, and the sensationalism of it turned me off. And it just took a few albums to really, really get me into it. This was one of them.
Yeah,
because it wasn't bullshit.
No, the quality
was just
the PR campaign.
It was like I realized, oh, wait a minute, there's some really amazing music here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So no, it's a very, very special record for me.
And it's like I said, this is all mid-pace. It's an album that really doesn't.
And I didn't know the Viking era battery at this time.
Yeah.
I just didn't know.
It's very much an influence on this.
Yeah.
Sure.
And
it's an album that really doesn't get out of its own way. It just revels in the spirit that it's laying out.
Exactly.
And it just offers so much atmosphere. And like I said, it's very triumphant sounding without necessarily trying to be. I don't know. It's like an effortless album. I don't know. I don't know how to. I don't know. Put words into that. What I feel.
I know
that.
No, I totally agree.
Okay, last batch here, and this is another band I've shown a million times on my channel and in these streams, and it is Eternus, Norwegian, Beyond the Wandering Moon. This album is an absolute diehard favorite of mine. This came out in
97.
97. And 95 was the Dark Sorcery EP, which is absolutely killer.
Yep.
This is, I've described it as a Norwegian bolt thrower. Again, mid-paced, plodding, flowing, flowing, melodic, but it sounds like a black metal bolt thrower.
I have been trying to describe this band for years. You just did it.
Well, at least I'm good for something. And this album, And So the Night Became, is also exceptional, but is it as good as this album? It is not. This album is a tough album to follow up. And it's a lot along the line. This album, too, is a tough album to follow up. They did it. Yeah. They did a great job. And, again, they did a good job with this one, too.
Man, I even like Ascension of Terror.
Really?
Yeah.
That's where they started to hint at, we're going to become brutal death metal here soon.
Yeah.
And then they finally jumped off.
I still like it.
Have you followed the band since these albums? They've got an album that came out a couple years ago called Heathen. It's trying to be this, and it's really good. I listened to it a lot. And I guess they got a new album coming out too.
Cool.
But again, Eternus, and Burning the Shroud, that's where they kind of fell into full-on brutal death metal. Burning the Shroud?
Burning the Shroud's is the compilation one, I think.
Shadows of Old, Ascension.
Or maybe it's Shadows of Old.
Ascension of Shadow. I can't remember the fucking
name.
It's got them on the cover. It's kind of a cheesy cover, but
yeah.
Oh my God. This album, absolute magic. Norwegian bolt thrower.
Both those albums, I have those two albums neck and neck because they're a little different. They did progress in their sound between those. With Wandering Moon, it's the songs have kind of a very longer, sort of grandiose, epic sweep with some of the little synth or piano parts here and there. So then it became a little tighter. It's a little more compact. It gets closer to that bolt thrower, heaviness. It strips away a little bit of the atmospheric stuff. But they're equally effective. I like both those albums a ton. But if you want to listen to the really longer song structures and really get into it, I pick Wandering Moon. If I want something that's a little tighter and more direct, I pick the other. And So the Night Became.
Beyond the Wandering Moon, it's like a very flowing quality to it. You just kind of get in with it, and you're flowing along like you're on a raft on a lazy river at night, looking up at the moon as you're flowing along this lazy river. That's the way the riffs feel. They're heavy and catchy and just so forward motion. The album is full of forward motion, and it's absolutely fantastic. Absolutely great.
Good pick.
But that's it. We did it. And you know what? There's probably a million other things we could have unearthed from our collections. I initially thought it was going to be hard, but the more I started digging, I'm like, oh, this album and this album. And I mean, it's endless. There's a lot of bands that didn't get their fair shake, but
yeah. And even for bands that did, there's a lot of albums that just, they've either gotten overlooked at the time or, just have never gotten their due, even if it's a band that, soldiered on. Sometimes albums just didn't click at the time they were released. As we talked about at the beginning, there's all kinds of things that can go wrong that'll get an album just completely buried by time and dust before you even know it.
Time and dust.
Yep. And then there's bands like Cynic who put out an album that was super groundbreaking and were hated for it. And it's decades later when they reform that all of a sudden people love Cynic. It's just like it takes sometimes time for it to catch up with what's going on. But
it's kind of funny because my knee-jerk reaction there is the old adage of never be the first person to try anything because you're going to get shot down horribly. It's the second person who tries it who's going to get all the credit and be acclaimed.
True.
But at the same time, that's not always true. In a lot of times in heavy metal, at least, it is the original one that gets all the acclaim and stuff.
Yeah, eventually.
Yeah. Well, sometimes it's even more instant than that. But yeah, with Cynic, it definitely was not the case. They definitely needed to grab some other local band and throw them out there on stage first, let them get booed, and then 2 years later they could have come out and ruled the universe.
What a shitty tour,
Yeah.
like,
Sinister
and Cannibal and Cannibal Corpse.
You couldn't have put them on a worse fucking bill.
I mean, just
It has to
put them on with Death. It'd have been different,
right.
It has to be one of the classic misalignments of heavy metal. I mean, it has to be up there with what was it? The Running Wild, Creator, and
Voivod.
who else was on that bill?
Voivod, weren't they?
Yeah. Just one of these things is not like the other. One of these things is going to get their ass kicked by the crowd.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the problem is nowadays is there are so many bands. I think metal is one of those unique genres where, I mean, I don't know how many country fans are in bands. Let's think about that. I mean, there's a handful, but metal fans, there's typically a lot of fans that are in bands or
That's
musicians.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it's just a musician style of music. I don't know. But nowadays, there's so much shit coming out and people have such short attention spans. Some of these bands, if a band like Cynic came out today, or, Cynic is because I mean, people have evolved with that weird style. They would maybe appreciate it more, but people don't spend as much time with new releases. Like, half of this stuff when I was younger, I buy a tape. I may buy 5 tapes a month. That's all I had money for. And I would, even if I didn't like them, I listened to them a million fucking times because that's all I had.
Yeah.
But nowadays, I mean, the older you get, you start making money and you're a collector scum and you start, assimilating everything that you want to check out. And after a while, you're listening to things 2 or 3 times max, and it's kind of a sad deal.
Yeah. It's like Hunter, I think you made the point earlier too. I mean, when we were listening to these things as kids, we were listening to them on cassette. And so you listened to the whole damn cassette because you couldn't just immediately skip to track number 4 and play it over and over again because you had to do these things called fast forward and rewind, which are reasons numbers 17 and 18.
Literally how I learned to listen to albums.
Mm-hmm.
It's because I was born into a cassette generation.
Yep. Yeah.
I'm grateful for that.
Me too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Me too. I was born into a 8-track generation, to be honest. And you want to talk about the worst medium ever? It's 8-track. Absolute garbage. Cutting off songs in the middle to go to the next program. Oh my God. Stupidest shit ever. But anyway.
I hear they're making a comeback, Marty.
Yeah, great. Just what we need. Yep.
Hey, guys.
But hey, all 40 to 60 people that watched tonight, thank you so much for joining us and contributing I saw a lot of your stuff in the chat, and I'm just trying to incorporate it into the chat. Sorry about that.
Yeah, folks have been mentioning all kinds of different bands and stuff. Some cool ones I know and some I've never heard of, but yeah. It's been an active chat with lots of good ideas being
absolutely
thrown.
Active chat. Next week we'll be back on Friday nights. Don't know who's coming yet. And Hunter, thank you so much, my friend.
Thanks for having me.
Joining us
tonight. It's a real pleasure.
A lot of fun.
It's been great.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's my honor. Yeah. Good to see
everybody
you guys.
Needs to check out Canvas Solaris and Radical Research Podcast. Absolute essential music and essential listening and educational media to absorb for sure.
Yep. All good stuff coming out of Hunter's Camp. Absolutely.
Yep. Anything else to plug, Hunter, before we jump?
No, sir.
Right on. Okay.
All right.
We're out.
Bye,
Y'all have a good night.
Everybody enjoy the